The story begins as a boy named Yamori sneaks out of his house in the middle of the night, and we learn that he's only 14. He has trouble sleeping, so he relaxes at the park, but he suddenly remembers how a girl at school confessed to him. He doesn't really understand dating, so he turned her down, but he started getting bullied for hurting the girl's feelings. He accidentally falls off his swing, so he sits on a bench and looks online for tips to help him sleep. There are suggestions to talk through his issues with someone he can trust, but he laughs as he notes that he doesn't have anyone like that. His phone suddenly rings, so he worries that his parents realized he snuck out, but it turns out to just be a message for a coupon. He reads that alcohol can help with getting to sleep, and as he walks along the street, he suddenly notices a glowing vending machine. He realizes it sells beer, so he decides to try it, but there's suddenly a girl beside him, and she wonders if he's old enough to drink. So Yamori panics and tries to run, but the girl grabs him and guesses that he has trouble sleeping. She tells him she can help him, and as they walk together, she explains that people usually stay up because they aren't satisfied with how they spent their day. She points to 3 men passed out on a bench, saying they look like they had a fulfilling day, but Yamori thinks they're just drunk. She gives them all high fives, and Yamori can't believe that she's so confident that she can talk to strangers, but she notes that night is the time of freedom, and if he doesn't let loose, he'll never be satisfied. Yamori wants to experience the feeling, so he runs back to the men and tries to high-five them, but the man throws up on him instead. The girl laughs at him, but she gives him a high five so that he can let loose a little. It seems to make him feel better, and the girl asks him if he's sleepy, so she invites him back to her apartment. When they get there, Yamori is relieved that it doesn't seem dodgy, but when they get inside, he can't believe that there's only a bed. She tells him to lie down as she takes off her jacket, and Yamori freaks out, thinking she has something dirty in mind. He tries to run away, but the girl catches him and assures him that he'll wake up refreshed in the morning. Yamori eventually stops resisting, and they both lie down, where the girl tells him to just relax and close his eyes. He panics as he thinks that the girl is a little crazy, but he actually finds comfort in her company. He decides to just pretend to sleep for a while and go home, but the girl waits for him, and when she thinks that he's really asleep, she bites his neck. She can't believe how good his blood tastes, but Yamori gets up, which surprises her that he isn't asleep. He sees that he's bleeding, so the girl makes up an excuse that she was killing a big mosquito, but Yamori doesn't buy it, and notes that she has blood on her face. He decides to just ask if she's a vampire, and when she confirms it, he starts to freak out thinking that he's now also a vampire. But the girl tells him it doesn't work like that, and that the myth that vampires suck blood to make new vampires is wrong. She explains that sucking blood is like eating, and if the myth were true, then all the vampires would be making vampires every time they ate, so Yamori becomes curious, and he wonders how vampires are made. The girl becomes shy, and ends up revealing that a person only becomes a vampire if they fall in love with the one who bit them. They head back outside to get air, and Yamori admits that he doesn't really understand love and has never had feelings for anyone before. The girl wonders if that means he likes boys, and while she mentions that she doesn't mind, Yamori explains that he just hasn't had good experiences with girls, because they're usually mean to him at school. She figures out that things haven't been easy for him, so she wonders how he's feeling about being out at night for the first time. He notes that his life was fine before, since he never really wanted anything and just did what he believed was right, but she tells him there's nothing wrong with staying up late until he's satisfied with how he spent his day. Yamori thinks about how he was stuck in the same cycle of a boring life, and he suddenly asks her to make him a vampire. She's stunned at the request, and reminds him he needs to fall in love, but Yamori doesn't care. He's hooked on the feeling that the night brings, and doesn't want to lose it, so he begs the girl to let him fall in love with her. She thinks he's ridiculous, but she's addicted to his blood, so she notes that she will only suck his blood, and if he falls in love, then that's his own issue, but she introduces herself as Nazuna. She takes him up to a roof and explains that blood tastes the best right before a person is about to sleep, because their blood is infused with the night. She wants to infuse him more with the night, but she notes that it's not just about staying up, and she suddenly kicks him off the edge, telling him she'll teach him how to enjoy the night. Yamori thinks he's about to die, but Nazuna suddenly saves him, and as she starts flying, Yamori finally feels alive. The next night, Yamori sneaks out again and meets up with Nazuna, who reminds him that for vampires, drinking blood can also feel like copulating. She asks if he forgot why he came, so he notes that he still wants to become a vampire, and for that to happen, he needs to fall in love with her. She gets embarrassed hearing this, and Yamori remembers she had a request for him. She tells him she just wanted to taste his blood again, so Yamori agrees and shows his neck, but she gets flustered at how easy he is and calls him a perv. Even though she wants to drink his blood, she adds that there's a right time for it. Yumori heads out on another night, but can't find Nazuna anywhere, so he goes back near his home and decides to try looking again. As he walks, he realizes that Nazuna drinking his blood won't turn him into a vampire yet, so he doesn't need to see her every night, but Nazuna suddenly shows up. Yumori gets annoyed since he's been looking for her, and Nazuna mentions she's been out searching for someone else to feed on. Yumori wonders why he isn't enough, so she explains that different people's blood tastes different, like eating different meals. Yumori notes that he doesn't want them to waste time looking for each other every night, and asks Nazuna for her number. She tells him she doesn't have a phone, and after thinking for a moment, she remembers something and takes him to her place. As they arrive, she digs out an old cell phone she had bought in case she ever needed it, but it was too heavy, so she never bothered using it. She notes that there were newer phones that came out, but by then, she didn't care anymore. She feels tired from flying around all night and lies down, telling Yumori to join her. As they lie there, she wonders if she can drink his blood, but Yumori turns her down, saying she can just find someone else, since it won't turn him into a vampire anyway. Nazuna tells him that she was actually looking for him earlier, and that blood like his is rare, so Yumori changes his mind and offers her his neck. On another night, we see Yumori looking for Nazuna again, and when she finally shows up, he tells her he's tired of how long it takes to find her. He gives her a watch transceiver, which gets her excited, and she asks if they can play with it, but Yumori explains it's for staying in touch. All she can think about is playing, so he tells her she can play with it if she wants, and remembers how he used to play with them as well. Nazuna is surprised since that means he had friends, but Yumori notes that he found a way to play with it even without friends. He reveals that when he was 9, he bought 2 transceivers and hid one away, planning to talk to whoever found it, but no one ever called, and when he checked, the transceiver was gone. Someone had taken it, so he thought about calling them, but he ended up just putting it away. Nazuna finds his story sad, and when he reveals that he still has the watch, she laughs at him for wearing it. Yumori gives her the new transceiver, and they decide to test it out. We see Yumori walking around, and he thinks he should try calling, but he remembers that the transceivers have a 150-meter range. He hesitates as he thinks about how he had never used the transceiver to make a call, and he doesn't even use his phone, but he hits the button anyway, and he gets a response. Nazuna jokes that there's an enemy ahead, asking if she should take them out, but Yumori tells her to wait. He's glad they have the transceivers and starts to feel like they're a couple that just started dating, but Nazuna finds him embarrassing. They hang out more, and Nazuna eventually brings him to the roof of his school. She tells him that the night changes how things look, and even the school doesn't seem so bad. Yumori agrees, and Nazuna suddenly bites his neck. She finds his blood delicious, and jokes that it's kind of lewd to drink it at school. Yumori remembers that she enjoys lewd jokes, but gets shy on the topic of love, since she doesn't want to create any vampire offspring, so he figures she's never been intimate with a human. He asks if he can call her Nazuna-chan, but she gets flustered and tells him to chill, but he's happy that they can start off as friends. On his way home, Yumori looks at his old transceiver and wonders what happened to the other one, but it suddenly rings, and a girl calls out to him from behind, asking him what he's doing, and he sees that she has the watch. The next night, Nazuna and Yumori sit on a roof, where she asks him if he really doesn't have any friends, and he wonders when it's even right to consider someone a friend. He notes that he had a couple back when he was younger, but isn't sure if he can still call them friends since he hasn't seen them for years. We go back to as Yumori's old friend Akira appeared behind him, and he wonders why she has his transceiver. She mentions she kept it since he gave it to her, but he's confused by what she means. She notes how they were always in different classes and stopped talking as much, so she thought he would use the transceiver to call her, but he never did. She mentioned how he hasn't been going to school lately, so she decided to try using the transceiver to check on him. Yumori is still confused about when he gave her the watch, so she notes that he left it on her mailbox, and he realizes he put it on top of her room number. She's glad that he seems okay, telling him she was worried about him since they're friends. Yumori is surprised that she sees him as a friend, and she notes how she wasn't sure at first since he was often cold, but after receiving the watch, she felt that it was his token of showing how he felt. Yumori realizes it was all a misunderstanding, but remembers that when they were younger, she once asked him to come play. He turned her down because he was watching ants, but she joined him because she already saw him as a friend. Yumori asks her if she's heading home, so she mentions that she's actually going to school because she likes walking in the morning, and it's still 4 a.m. Yumori gets embarrassed hearing this and notes that he's just now heading home, but as they leave, she asks if they can meet again at the same time tomorrow. Yumori later returns to Nazuna's place and contacts her with the transceiver, letting her know that he actually did have a friend, but she gets annoyed and just heads to bed. After a few nights, Nazuna slowly starts noticing that Yumori always leaves right after she drinks his blood. She jokes that their relationship's starting to feel purely physical, but mentions that it works for her, and she doesn't really mind. She adds that he's probably sneaking off to see another woman, but he awkwardly denies it, and when she calls him out, he insists it isn't what she's thinking and leaves. The next night, he meets up with Akira again. He remembers that she used to be a lot more talkative, so he asks if she's enjoying spending time with him, and when she agrees, it makes him wonder if she actually likes him, but he suddenly spots Nazuna spying on them. He thinks she's angry, but she just walks up, asking what they're up to in a place like this. Yumori is confused, and Akira asks if he knows her, but Nazuna tells her she shouldn't be worried, because it's just a physical thing between them, but when Akira hears them being so familiar with each other, she assumes that they like each other. Nazuna gets flustered and wants to prove that everything doesn't have to be romantic. She bites Yumori's neck right there and drinks his blood, revealing that she's a vampire. She ends up dragging both of them to a bar and orders a beer. Akira orders breakfast and a coffee, and she asks Yumori why he lets Nazuna drink his blood, wondering if it's got something to do with him skipping school. Yumori apologizes and reveals that he isn't sure how to explain it, but school just stopped being fun one day, and he didn't know what to do with the feeling. Akira notes that she gets it, because she doesn't enjoy school or home either, but she still goes. She's glad she ran into him again, and she tells him to come to school with her, because it's more fun with him around. Nazuna finds Akira interesting, even though Akira still doesn't believe she's a vampire. She wonders why Akira hadn't called or met up with Yumori until now if she really was his friend. She suddenly stands up and leaves, so Yumori quickly covers her bill. He wonders if she's mad, but she notes that she isn't. Yumori doesn't believe her, and says that he can't tell unless she tells him, which frustrates her, and she starts insulting him before flying off. He apologizes for seeing his friend in secret, but Nazuna tells him that isn't what she's upset about. Yumori reveals that he's never had a fight like this and doesn't know what to do, but he wants to clear things up. Nazuna shows up and asks if their relationship even counts as one that needs fixing. She adds that she wasn't really angry, and she was just ticked off. It was because he didn't answer when Akira invited him to school, so he notes that he hesitated because he didn't know how to tell a human friend that he's skipping school because he wants to become a vampire. Nazuna notices blood on him and kisses him to get it. She notes that him calling Akira his human friend implies that she's his vampire friend, but she suddenly leaves, and he notes that friends don't usually kiss each other. We see Akira at school, and the teacher catches a boy falling asleep, so she reminds them that they need to get proper sleep to stay healthy. After school, Akira goes home, and she sticks to her usual routine where she goes to bed at 8:30. Meanwhile, Yumori heads out looking for Nazuna. He finds her, but avoids meeting her right away and starts thinking about their kiss, realizing it's usually something that couples do, so he wonders if he's already in love with her and if he's finally ready to become a vampire. Nazuna shows up, but she's annoyed since he didn't find her even though she was waiting somewhere easy for him to find. Yumori admits that he's fallen for her and invites her to bite him, thinking that he's finally going to become a vampire. Nazuna goes along with it and drinks his blood, and Yumori is hyped thinking he's finally turned, but she shuts him down and notes that he's not a vampire yet. She figures he's confused about what happened the night before, and notes that a kiss doesn't mean he's in love, because it could have just been lust. Yumori gets embarrassed that he was aroused from something so small, even though it was his first kiss. He assumes Nazuna has had plenty, but she notes that it was also her first time, and mentions that friends can kiss sometimes. Meanwhile, Akira hasn't been sleeping well, and now wakes up before midnight. She gets dressed for school and heads out early, but Yumori runs into her, and is surprised since it's only midnight, so Akira mentions that the teacher told them they need to sleep properly. Yumori wonders if she's been following that advice, so she notes that she has been trying, but she just woke up this time and doesn't plan to go back to bed. Yumori invites her to hang out with him and Nazuna since she intends to stay up until school starts, and they head over to Nazuna's place. We see Yumori and Nazuna playing video games, but she easily beats him. She asks Akira to play, offering her a kiss if she wins, but she turns it down, because she's not really interested in such a reward, and wonders if Nazuna made that same offer to Yumori. Nazuna confirms that she did, but Yumori quickly denies it, so Nazuna adds that they've kissed without any deal. Akira admits she wants to support Yumori, but can't accept him getting involved with someone like Nazuna, but Nazuna notes that Yumori doesn't even like her. She pulls out a dating sim, and in the game, 3 girls ask Yumori's character to go to school with them, but he turns them all down, explaining that he doesn't like being in groups. A different girl suddenly bumps into him, and apologizes quietly before walking off, but Yumori mentions that she's the type he prefers. Nazuna starts teasing him, asking if he likes quiet girls with big chests, and he gets flustered. Akira watches them and starts to relax, realizing that Yumori is still the same and probably isn't doing anything shady at night. Nazuna checks the time and notes that it's almost 4 a.m., so they should go to sleep. She adds she wants to drink some blood before that, and Akira is shocked when she hears that they sleep together, but Yumori tries to explain it's not what it sounds like. Nazuna jokes that tonight is a little different since there's 2 girls, and as they lie down on the futon, Akira feels too awkward and notes that she'll just wait outside until school starts. Nazuna points out that it's raining and she doesn't have an umbrella, so she decides to stay, even though she's clearly annoyed when Nazuna starts drinking Yumori's blood right in front of her. Yumori complains since he already asked her not to do it while Akira's around, but Nazuna notes that she just wanted to make things more fun. Akira asks Nazuna what her deal with blood is even about, and Nazuna mentions that it's simply that Yumori has tasty blood, and he wants her to drink it. Akira doesn't get why he'd want that, so Yumori finally reveals that he wants to become a vampire. She's a little surprised hearing this, but tells him it's the first time he's ever said anything about his future, so at least now he has a goal. Akira figures Yumori must be a vampire by now, but he explains he still isn't, because he needs to fall in love with Nazuna first, which gets Nazuna embarrassed again. She tells them to go to sleep, and all 3 of them lie down. Akira mentions that she's only staying because of the rain and isn't actually sleepy, but Nazuna tells her to just lie down anyway, because she might end up dozing off. Yumori apologizes for dragging her into it, but notes that he wanted her to see how his nights usually go, so she doesn't need to worry about him. She notices that he's trying not to move his hands too much, so she tells him to relax and that it's fine even if their hands touch, because if he stays stiff like that, he won't be able to sleep. Akira adds that even if he does become a vampire, she still wants to stay friends, and she'll still keep pushing him to go to school, since being a vampire doesn't mean skipping out his studies, but she rolls over and ends up falling asleep. A few hours later, Akira wakes up and sees that she's late for school. She quickly gets up and lets Yumori know that she's heading out. As she leaves, Nazuna asks her if she slept well, adding that people usually do when they are satisfied with their day. Nazuna wakes up late in the afternoon, but is disappointed that she's up so early. We see her playing a game, but the game annoys her, so she stops playing. She waits for a delivery, but when it doesn't show up, she finds a delivery slip, which notes that they came earlier than the time she requested, but she missed them because she was asleep. By the time she's free to head out, it's already past 8 o'clock, and she's not sure what to do. Since there's nothing fun to do at home, she goes outside, but the mood around town feels off, with everyone looking glum. She ends up finding a cat and plays with it to pass the time, but later notices that it smells, and the stench sticks to her hands. She decides to go to a public bath, and at the counter, she hands over her transceiver, asking them to let her know if it rings. While she bathes, she's annoyed that she can't see her reflection since she's a vampire, but before she can relax, her transceiver rings, so she rushes out while she's still wet. She meets Yumori outside, and he notes that she looks different, but when he learns that she just came from a bath, he tells her that he wants one too, so Nazuna agrees to go again since she didn't finish earlier. Yumori starts overthinking afterward, because he can't tell if it's Nazuna's new hairstyle, or just the bath that's messing with him. As he struggles to focus, he asks her to suck his blood. She agrees and takes more than usual since she's a bit hungrier, but he ends up feeling drained, so they decide to rest somewhere and find a nearby place. As they get in and Nazuna gets comfortable, Yumori is embarrassed after realizing it's a love hotel. Nazuna stops bouncing and asks Yumori if he's figured out his feelings, revealing that when she drinks his blood, she can vaguely tell what he's thinking, and she jokes that she looked too tempting after her bath and messed with his head. Yumori admits he's trying to fall in love with her, but feels weird when his thoughts drift that way since they're supposed to be friends. Nazuna notes that those shifting emotions actually improve the taste of his blood, because stirring up different feelings adds variety to the taste. She remembers that the rooms there usually have adult videos, so she tries to play one at full volume to mess with the neighbors, but is disappointed when she discovers that it costs money. Yumori starts wondering how she could tell his blood was better, which makes him curious about how many people she's fed on before. At that moment, Nazuna spots someone she used to drink from and points them out, but Yumori finds it insensitive. She quickly realizes he's jealous, and figures he doesn't want to hear about her past. She mentions that she used to drink from women too, but she now only gets blood from him. Yumori asks if she's had someone like him before, someone who was a regular donor, so she tells him that she did. He assumes she probably used to pretend to offer shady services, but she gets offended and explains she was a professional cuddler. Yumori isn't convinced, especially when she puts on a nurse outfit, but she notes that it's just her uniform. She even pulls out a price list for her services, but tells Yumori that she won't charge him, so he picks the massage course. While giving him a massage, Mizuna explains how she used to run things. She'd help clients relax, let them fall asleep, and then quietly suck their blood. She starts pointing out pressure spots and how they benefit him, but before she can drink his blood, the doorbell rings. It turns out she forgot to take down her sign, and a customer has arrived. She knows the client usually books the massage course, which is tiring, so she asks Yumori to handle it. Yumori opens the door and lets them in, noting that the boss is resting, but she's just playing video games. She tells Yumori that it's a good deal for him anyway, since he will get to touch a girl, but Yumori gets annoyed and asks Mizuna to send the woman away. Mizuna stops him and mentions that she can't let the client go, because she hasn't been working since she's been hanging out with him, and now she's broke. Yumori argues that it has nothing to do with him, but she reminds him that enjoying the night costs money, and she paid for the hotel. She begs him to do it, and offers to pay him 2,000 yen. Yumori mentions that he's never done a massage before, but Mizuna tells him just to do exactly what she did to him, and she even adds that she'll give him another kiss if he agrees to do it. Earlier that evening, we see the girl Kiyosumi heading home after drinks, but she thinks about how much she doesn't like after-work outings, because she'd rather be home, or even working late at the office. She feels really tired, and remembers how relaxed she felt at Mizuna's place when she got one of her massages, so she decides to stop by again, but when she arrives, she's surprised to be greeted by Yumori. After waiting for a while, he returns and tells her that he'll be the one giving her the massage. As he gives her the massage, he keeps thinking about the money he's about to earn, and the kiss he'll get as a bonus. Kiyosumi asks him how old he is, and she's shocked when he tells her that he's 14, because she wasn't even working at that age. She asks him why he took this job, so he explains that he needs the money. He also mentions that he quit school, and since he couldn't sleep, he started wandering around at night. The freedom he felt at night was exciting, so he doesn't want to lose that feeling. Kiyosumi tells him that she gets it, and we learn that she had a similar moment 10 years ago. She went out at night to buy some food, and ended up falling in love with the quiet and calmness of the night. She wonders why he quit school, so he tells her that he just got bored. She eventually admits that she came there because she's tired. Her job is enjoyable, but it requires dealing with other people, like her bosses and coworkers, and always pretending to have fun. As she breaks down, she mentions that she can't take it anymore, and doesn't want to go back to the office or to the after-work events. Her phone suddenly rings, and she knows it's her boss calling, which means she needs to go back, even at such a late hour. She explains that skipping the call would get her in trouble, so she has to go, but Yumori hesitates, wondering if he should stop her, or if he'll still get paid if she leaves halfway. He realizes that none of that matters, and sees that she's a lot like him, so he gets up and blocks the exit, telling her that she's not leaving because the massage isn't finished, and she's going to enjoy the night. Yumori calls Mizuna, who phases through the wall, and he tells her not to let Kiyosumi go to work. Mizuna agrees, asking him to open the window, and she grabs Kiyosumi. She throws her out, and Kiyosumi starts panicking, thinking she's going to die from the fall, but Yumori jumps after her, and Mizuna catches them both. After they land, Yumori apologizes for how things went down, but notes that he didn't want her to go back to work, because if it's making her cry, then it might not be the best idea to keep doing it. Kiyosumi argues that he doesn't get it, because work isn't like school, and adults have to deal with things even if it hurts, but at that moment, Yumori tells her that he wants to become a vampire. He explains that Mizuna is a vampire, and he wants her to turn him into one too. He admits he's naive and doesn't really understand work yet, and he might be crazy, but any boss calling at 2 in the morning must be insane. He tells her that if she's going to be crazy, she might as well have fun, mentioning that as a vampire, they don't need to be rational since they aren't human. Kiyosumi thinks his logic is ridiculous, and realizes that he just wants to become a vampire so he can continue to enjoy the night, but admits that she envies him. She ends up laughing at how simple his reason is, but he walks into the middle of the road, reminding her how they're free to do anything at night, and she walks out to him. She remembers how fun it can be, even though it shouldn't be allowed, and Yumori tells her it's because she's a little crazy as well, but she ends up deciding to go back to work, since she needs to be an adult. She thanks him for helping her take the pressure off, and she hopes that he will get to become a vampire, but she also seems to wish that she could become one as well. As she heads off, Yumori calls out to her, and promises to turn her into a vampire if he becomes one. After Kiyosumi leaves, Mizuna notes that Yumori made a bold promise, but he doesn't mind, because he just has to make her fall for him, and he figures girls tend to like him anyway. Mizuna asks Yumori to come up with something fun for the night, so he thinks of some different ideas, but she turns them all down. He suggests a nighttime pool, and she actually likes it, so they head to a club that has one. After they arrive, we see Yumori sitting alone while waiting for Mizuna. The place isn't what Yumori expected, so he starts imagining what Nazuna might look like in a swimsuit, but she shows up wearing clothes over it. She heads off to get drinks, and people around them start staring at her because they're drawn in by her looks. There are two guys that approach her and try to flirt, but Nazuna notices Yumori's expression and decides to mess with him, telling the guys she came with someone, but he might have left already. At that moment, Yumori gets irritated and walks over, pulling her away. He later admits that he didn't like the place because it was too crowded, and he didn't enjoy hearing people talk about her, or seeing how easily they tried to get close to her. Nazuna asks if he still wants to swim, and suddenly grabs him and flies off. She takes him to an empty pool, and Yumori realizes that it's the one from his school, and they dive right into it. Yumori can't believe she just did that, and Nazuna laughs, asking if he found it fun. She apologizes for teasing him earlier, but he tells her it's fine, wondering about how he was feeling, and if he would be able to get an answer if he asked Nazuna. The next night, we see Yumori taking a walk in the street, but he's worried he might bump into someone he knows, and at that moment, someone calls him from behind. He turns around to see that it's just Kiyosumi, and she mentions that she's off work early, so she decides to thank him for the other night by buying him a drink. She lets him know that his promise to turn her into a vampire took a lot of weight off her shoulders, and for that, she's grateful, but as she leaves, he's left confused trying to make sense of it all. It suddenly starts to rain, so Yumori runs for cover and watches people gathering inside a smoking area nearby. He notices a man trying to hit on a girl, who immediately turns him down, and the girl suddenly looks at Yumori and waves at him. After he opens his drink, the girl walks over and asks what he thought of what just happened, assuming he saw the whole thing and mentioning that the man even offered her money. Yumori figures it must have been uncomfortable, but she disagrees and explains that she had actually been waiting for someone to try, because she was bored and enjoys messing with people just to pass the time. She notes that she doesn't mess with everyone, only guys who catch her interest, but that guy clearly wasn't her type. Yumori starts feeling uneasy about how casually she treats the situation and tries to let her know it's dangerous, but she catches him staring at her chest and teases him for trying to get a better look. He quickly explains that he wasn't staring, but she grabs his drink and walks off. Yumori follows her, hoping to get it back, but she's already finished it. She tells him that everything has been feeling dull, and nothing has been going the way she wants lately. Yumori relates to that and notes that things will turn out fine, and she immediately hugs him and thanks him. Just as she's about to bite him, Nazuna suddenly appears and slices her arm, telling the girl to stay away from her prey. The girl immediately reattaches her arm, and mentions that everyone's been talking about how Nazuna has been wasting her time on a human. She insists that if Nazuna won't turn him into a vampire, she'll kill him herself, but as she jumps forward, Nazuna gets in her way. Yumori tries to back away, but another girl appears behind him and grabs him. She mentions that they're borrowing him for a while, before flying off with him, and Nazuna knocks her opponent away, demanding to know where Yumori was taken. Yumori is brought to a quiet spot, where 3 more women are waiting, and it turns out that all of them are vampires. They note how young he is, and explain that someone needs to turn him into a vampire, because letting a human learn too much about their kind is dangerous. The one leading the group introduces herself as Nico, and reveals the others as Midori, Atsuka, and Kabura. They let him know that he can pick any of them, even the girl from earlier named Sari, but Yumori immediately chooses Nazuna, which surprises all of them. Nico is confused, because the others are known for being popular, while Nazuna is terrible when it comes to romance. Nico tries to win him over by suggesting that they would make a good match, and the others call her out for making such a move. Yumori notes that she actually reminds him of Nazuna, which annoys her, but he explains he meant her personality. He asks them if Nazuna is really that unpopular, and they explain that it's not about looks, because she just doesn't bother to act appealing. Meanwhile, Sari warns Nazuna that if she doesn't plan to turn Yumori into a vampire, she's putting him at risk. Nazuna mentions that she does intend to make him her offspring, but Sari isn't convinced and thinks she might just be stalling. She backs off a little, assuming that Yumori is nothing more than a distraction, and warns Nazuna that if things continue the way they are, someone will either turn him into a vampire or kill him. Back at the hideout, Midori tries to get closer to Yumori by asking about his ideal type. The others recognize her usual tactic, and she notes that she likes physical closeness. She asks him if she's his type, but tells him not to answer unless it's a yes. The others immediately assume he's going to say yes, but he surprisingly declines. He explains that he doesn't really understand the idea of liking someone, and while Midori isn't a firm no, he explains that he's never had a moment where anyone has felt like a direct yes. Hatsuka reminds him that if he doesn't choose one of them, they'll be forced to kill him, and Nico adds that they don't want that outcome, but they can't let him keep interacting with Nazuna if nothing's happening. Yumori finally admits that he wants to become a vampire, which surprises them, so they ask if Nazuna knows, and he mentions that she does, which is why he wants to fall in love with her. At that moment, Nazuna suddenly arrives and hears everything. Everyone thinks she's angry, but when Hatsuka checks her face, they see that she's actually blushing. She's too embarrassed to speak, and when Yumori tries to talk to her, she tells him to be quiet. The others start mocking her, noting that her awkwardness is exactly why she's not popular. Nazuna tries to leave with Yumori, but they block her way and demand to know how she plans to make Yumori fall in love, but Kabura doubts she has a plan since she's never taken part in vampire affairs or created any offspring. She wants to know what makes Yumori so different, and wonders what Nazuna's taste is. Kabura tells Yumori to spend time with her instead if Nazuna is ever too busy, but Nazuna stops her and threatens to kill her if she touches him again. Nico steps in to calm things down, but admits that they're genuinely curious about what makes Nazuna so interested in Yumori. Yumori reveals that it's because she likes the taste of his blood, and they made a deal where she gets to drink it, and in return, she will eventually turn him into a vampire. Midori still thinks Nazuna might be bluffing and has no real plan to create an offspring, so Yumori adds that Nazuna told him that he's free to fall in love with her whenever he can. Nico laughs and notes that it works just fine, and Hatsuka assumes Nazuna is just too embarrassed to admit how much she cares. She tells Yumori that there's no need to confess anything, because Nazuna can turn him into a vampire whenever she wants. Nico declares that they won't kill or abduct Yumori for now, but if nothing changes, they might reconsider, and Yumori tells them not to worry, because even if it takes years, he'll eventually become a vampire. Everyone stares at him awkwardly, so he's confused by their reaction and asks what's wrong. Nico explains that there's actually a time limit, because once someone gets their blood sucked for the first time, they only have a year to turn into a vampire, and after that, it becomes impossible. Yumori turns to Nazuna in shock, and she notes that she forgot about that. Nazuna announces that she's taking Yumori home, but as she sees the girls still having fun, she turns to Yumori and brings up the massage from the other night, mentioning that he hasn't gotten his reward yet, so she suddenly kisses him in front of everyone and flies away with him. On the way out, Yumori tells her that she's strange even for a vampire, but he's glad that she met him first. The next morning, Yumori tells Akira about the 1-year limit. She mentions that it's terrible, and he thinks that a year feels too short, when most people spend much longer chasing a future, but Akira clarifies that's not what she meant, and she notes that his life is in danger now, because if he doesn't turn into a vampire within a year, he will be killed. Yumori notes that it should be fine since they let him go before, but Akira explains that it won't matter, because if he stays human, he's a liability. He finally understands how serious the situation is, and he wonders if he really has only 1 year left to live. A few moments later, Akira finds her friend Mahiru, lying on the stairs on her way to school. He notes that he stayed out all night having fun and ended up falling asleep there. Akira is surprised, since he's usually a good student, so she asks why he stayed out. So Mahiru admits that he likes someone, but they can only meet at night. Akira jokes that it's probably an older woman, and hopes that it isn't a vampire, but he doesn't get what she's saying. He asks if Yumori still hasn't been coming to school, and he hopes that the three of them can hang out again like they used to, but Akira's confused, asking when the three of them ever hung out. Mahiru seems caught off guard, while Akira tells him that he has a lot of friends, so she can't really remember a time when it was just the three of them together. As they head to class, Mahiru says he'll try talking to Yumori, but if he can't reach him, he wants Akira to let him know that he's worried. Akira remembers a moment from the past, when she and Yumori were watching ants, and Mahiru joined them, asking if it was actually fun. He invited them to play baseball with him, and Yumori didn't know the rules, but Mahiru offered to teach him the basics. Later that day, Akira sees Mahiru walking down the stairs with a friend, and they both look exhausted, so she notes that all her friends need to get proper sleep. A few hours later at night, Yumori runs into Seri and freaks out. He pretends to be someone else and tries to run, but Seri stops him and mentions that she heard his blood was delicious, so she wants a taste, but he immediately declines. He finally stops running and starts talking, mentioning that he's stuck because he doesn't know how to fall in love or what to do next. He doesn't think he'll be able to fall in love within a year, and she seems to have recorded him on her phone. When he's done talking, Seri gets super excited at the thought of a clueless middle schooler asking about love. She calls herself a love guru, and notes that she knows how to get any guy and girl closer. She tells him that the best strategy for a guy and girl to get closer is through a physical approach, so Yumori visits Nazuna and asks her out on a date, but she refuses, and goes back inside to play her games. Yumori is upset at the thought that she turned him down for a game, so he angrily turns it off. She gets mad, but mentions that at least modern games have save files. He keeps asking her out, so she ends up giving in just to get it over with. He takes her to a movie, but it's a rom-com, and she wonders if he's trying to torture her, so Yumori apologizes and they leave. Yumori checks a list that Sari gave him, and the next step is a cafe. While inside, Yumori asks if she liked the movie, but she gets more irritated and asks him who gave him these dating ideas. He remembers Sari warned him not to mention her name since Nazuna hates her, but before he can lie, she grabs the list from his pocket. She discovers that it's from Sari, so she calls the plan lame and walks off, while Yumori ends up back home all alone. Later that night, Nazuna gets hungry after playing games, so she takes a look at the list again and flies to Yumori's place, asking if he wants to do the last item, which is a meal with a night view. She grabs him and flies over the city, and as they float above the lights, she wonders what even counts as a date, since they've always done stuff like this anyway. She decides their usual routine is what makes it fun, and she wants to keep it that way, as she drinks his blood for the night. A few minutes later, we see Yumori looking for Nazuna because he took his eyes off of her. Yumori sees Mahiru with another guy and 2 girls, so he freezes, and Mahiru walks right past him, just as he hoped, but Mahiru comes back to talk to him. They move to a quieter spot, and Yumori is surprised that Mahiru recognized him so easily, and Mahiru notes that they're friends. Yumori remembers wondering what makes someone a friend, but he always thought of Mahiru and Akira as his friends. Since Akira is a girl, talking to her wasn't easy, so things felt more natural with Mahiru. Yumori sees him as perfect, since he has good grades, he's athletic, and everyone likes him, so just hearing Mahiru call him a friend makes him happy. As they talk, Akira shows up, and Mahiru asks if she's heading home, but she says she's actually going out. She tells Mahiru that Yumori's been skipping school to spend time with a girl, and she wants him to try convincing Yumori to return. Mahiru asks him if he has fun being with the girl, but Mahiru suddenly gets a message, and tells them he has to go, but he thanks Yumori for giving him encouragement. Yumori isn't sure what he did, but he's happy to be thanked by Mahiru, and Akira notes how he's always awkward around Mahiru, but Yumori thinks he's everyone's role model. Meanwhile, Nazuna is looking for Yumori, but she sees Mahiru talking to a woman. Yumori shows up, and Nazuna walks over and grabs his hand. She notes that he disappears the second she stops watching him, but Yumori notes that she's the one who keeps doing that. We see Sari texting a boy, and we learn that she had planned on making him one of her offspring, but she no longer feels like doing it. She notices Yumori and rushes towards him, but Nazuna kicks her away, which surprises him since Sari didn't even do anything to him. Nazuna explains that her body acted on its own, since Sari's face annoys her, but she is angry hearing this, so they start fighting. Sari mentions that she had no intention of hurting Yumori, but Nazuna explains that she got the wrong idea, since Sari tried to hurt him in the past. Nazuna wonders why she's trying to get close to him, since she only gets friendly with humans to suck their blood, so she explains that she was just trying to mess with him and leaves. He stops her and wonders if she wants to talk about something, since she said things haven't been fun lately, and he knows that even vampires have their own problems, so she invites him to karaoke. She tells him how things have been a hassle lately, since she had to deal with a lot of boys, and she thinks he doesn't understand what she's trying to say. But he explains that he gets it, since he also doesn't like people who think romance is the essence of life. Sari notes that they should enjoy the karaoke, but she's annoyed since Yumori isn't singing along with her, so he mentions that he doesn't know the song. She tells him to put on a song he likes, and she's surprised when he plays one that is 30 years old, but she still likes it, so she asks him to play other songs from that band. A boy named Hito suddenly starts knocking on their door, which creeps Yumori out, but Sari mentions that it's normal for her since she's popular. He tells her to do something about it if she knows Hito, and she notes that it happens to her a lot, since guys turn into psychos for her. Yumori can't concentrate on what she's saying since Hito is banging on the door, so she waves at him to make him stop, and she mentions how people like him just want her attention. Yumori wonders if it's the type of stuff she's been having issues with, and he asks her what he can do to help her, but she tells him she can just eliminate them if things get too messy. He calls her arrogant, but she thinks he's the arrogant one, since he doesn't realize that human rules don't apply to her, and she asks him to tell her one reason why it's bad to kill someone. He notes that he doesn't mean that she can't eliminate anyone, since there must have been situations where she needs to kill a person, but he thinks Hito will leave her alone if she just talks to him. But he comes into the room, since he thinks they're arguing about him, and seeing the look in his eyes, Yumori realizes that he can't be reasoned with. Sari tries to kill Hito, so Yumori pushes him out of harm's way, and helps him get away from her. They reach a dark alley, where Yumori asks Hito why he's after Sari, so he mentions that he just wants to know what she thinks about him, which surprises Yumori, and he asks Hito to tell him about his feelings. We go back to when Hito first met Sari, and he stumbles in front of her, so she asks him if he's okay, and they end up going to a restaurant. He tells her that when they love someone, their brains release dopamine, which acts like a drug, and he believes that it's the reason he didn't act like himself when he was with his ex-girlfriend. He thinks he was creepy since he couldn't even talk to her, but Sari is surprised that it's what he thinks about love. In the present, Hito mentions that at first, he didn't care what he meant to Sari as long as he could see her, but he eventually started thinking about what she's doing when she isn't with him. So he started texting her all the time, but Yumori tells him that she complains about people like him, and she finds them in the alley. She still plans to kill Hito, but Yumori refuses to let her do it, so she decides to kill him as well. She tells Hito she's a vampire, and reveals that the only reason she got close to him was because she wanted to turn him into her offspring. She rushes towards them, but Nazuna arrives and holds her down, so Sari tells her to let go, and she promises not to hurt Yumori. Nazuna wonders why Sari is trying to eliminate Hito, since she usually doesn't go after humans, but Hito tells Nazuna to release her, explaining that it's his fault for falling in love with her. He notes that they were supposed to be just friends, and Sari reveals that she never planned on turning him into an offspring, since she got tired of humans talking to her about romance. But she doesn't know how to talk to them like an ordinary friend, so she subconsciously acts to make people fall in love with her. Nazuna lets her go, and she tells Hito that they should stop seeing each other, but Yumori wonders what she really wants to do. He thinks she's crazy, since she wanted to save her friendship with Hito by killing him, and he tells them to talk to each other before making any decision. She tells Hito that vampires aren't allowed to be friends with humans, and she tries to say goodbye, but she suddenly starts crying, since she doesn't wish to end their friendship. She admits that she had fun when she was with him, and he also doesn't want to be away from her, so he tells her to make him her offspring. She bites into his arm, and Yumori is jealous seeing them, and he wishes he had the kind of relationship that they have. But Nazuna tells him they're going to take it slow, and after that, they go to the karaoke to celebrate Hito becoming an offspring. We see Midori distributing flyers to advertise her maid cafe, but she gets a message from one of the maids, who mentions that she can't make it to work today. Midori realizes that she needs to find someone who can take the maid's place, and she runs into Nazuna, thinking she's perfect for the job, since she isn't good with men. She gives Nazuna a maid outfit, and tells her it looks great on her, but she asks Yumori what he plans to do while she completes her shift. She wonders if he wants to wear a maid outfit as well, but he mentions that he isn't interested, and Midori is still annoyed at how he rejected her. So she plans to show him how cute she can be, and tells him to come back after 5 minutes. As Yumori returns to the cafe, Midori treats him as a regular customer, but she's angry since Nazuna isn't acting like a maid. She stops herself from yelling, since it will ruin her image as a maid, and she reminds Nazuna that she's getting paid to do her job. Yumori wonders why Midori is the most popular maid, so she explains that it's because of her good looks, and he's amazed by her acting as she serves another customer. Another maid named Arisa serves Yumori, and he's impressed by her introduction, since it makes him feel special. But as he calls Midori by her last name, Arisa tells him to stop, since she's only known as Midori among the customers. She thinks Yumori is there because of Midori as well, and Arisa praises her for her appearance and personality, revealing that she used to be the #1 maid before Midori came to the cafe. After the shift, Midori plans to take a picture with Nazuna so that she can post it on the cafe's social media page, but she sees that someone has sent her sensitive pictures of one of the maids. Yumori tries to analyze the pictures, but Midori thinks he's just trying to get a better look, so she calls him a pervert. He realizes that they're Risa's pictures, so they realize that the culprit likes her, and Midori asks for Yumori's help to catch the culprit. The next day, as Yumori is looking at the pictures, Arisa suddenly appears behind him, and she thinks the culprit was able to take her pictures since she was careless, but he assures her she isn't at fault. He notices that there's a picture of her changing clothes, which was taken from the window, so he goes to check it out. He sees that there's a balcony outside the window, but Arisa tells him she needs to change her clothes, which makes him embarrassed, and he rushes out of the room. He runs into Nazuna, who asks him if he's found any leads, and she mentions that she's been looking at customers to see if there's anyone suspicious, but she couldn't find anything. Yumori sees a room that leads to the balcony, but he sees that it's locked, so he goes outside, and Nazuna climbs with him to the balcony. Arisa opens the window, and she's surprised to see them standing there, so Nazuna tells her they're just looking for clues. She tells Arisa to go back to work, and after she leaves, Yumori takes photos of the room, but he feels like something is off. Nazuna thinks it's because no one is in the photo, so she stands in front of the camera, but they're shocked by how ugly she looks. Yumori suddenly realizes something, so he tells Nazuna to gather everyone after work, since he's figured out who the culprit is. Midori rushes to the room, and she asks him if he really solved the mystery, but she realizes that he isn't confident at all. He tells Nazuna to do what he told her before, while he and Midori hide in a locker, so as Arisa enters the room, Nazuna tells her to lock up since she's the last one to leave. Midori wonders why they need to hide, so Yumori notes that all the pictures were taken after the closing time, since there are no customers or staff in any of them. They hear the window opening, so they come out of the locker, but we see Nazuna sitting outside on the balcony, and she realizes that Arisa took the photos herself. They wonder how Yumori knew about it, so he explains that the pictures were perfect, and if there really was a stalker, they would have caught her in the middle of changing. He wonders why she did it, but she doesn't respond, so Midori tells him it's because she was frustrated that she lost her #1 position, and it was her way of showing people she's still popular. Midori thinks she's mentally ill, and Arisa notes that she'll quit, but Midori tells her it's okay to act that way, since everyone has issues, and they just need to learn to live with it. After that, Nazuna keeps working at the cafe since the job pays well, and as Yumori is enjoying a glass of juice, Arisa joins him on her day off. She tells him how she's so obsessed with taking selfies that she sometimes spends a whole day getting the perfect shot, and she never thought anyone would tell her it's okay for her to act that way. She reveals that Midori liked a photo she sent her, and she wants to have a picture with him, so they take a selfie together. Nazuna shows Yumori the things she bought for her cuddle buddy business, and she tells him to find customers, so he goes out at night to look for anyone who seems tired. He comes across a girl named Anko, and he realizes that she looks exhausted, so he offers to talk to her if something's bothering her. She accepts his offer, so they go to a restaurant, where he assures her that he wasn't making a move on her, but she's disappointed hearing this. He tells her about the cuddle buddy business, and she realizes what kind of arrangement he's proposing, but he notes that he works for a girl who will be doing the cuddling. She mentions that it's illegal for minors to work after 10 p.m., and she threatens to report their business, so he becomes nervous, but she tells him to calm down since she'll never do that. She tells him she isn't interested in cuddling with someone, so he mentions that they also do massages, and she notes that she wants to try it, since she walks a lot during her job. He wonders what she does for a living, so she reveals that she's a detective, and notes that she specializes in looking for missing people. She asks him about Hito, and he tells her he doesn't know who that is, but she suddenly grabs his arm and stares at him. She apologizes for startling him, and decides to leave after paying the bill, but as she walks away, she tells him to call her if he hears anything about Hito. Yumori returns to Nazuna, who's annoyed that he didn't get any customers, but he shows her all the beer he bought, which makes her happy. After that, Yumori meets up with Mihiru and Akira, and Mihiru takes them to their school, telling them they're going to break in and have fun. He mentions how they don't know when they'll meet again, since Yumori has stopped coming to school, so he wants to make a memory of them having fun, just like they did in the past. He notes that there are 7 mysteries about their school, and one of them is about a ghost in the girls' bathroom, but he wants to know if it's true. So he tells Akira to go in, explaining that he and Yumori can't enter since they're boys, but she hits his head and makes them go with her. She calls out to the ghost, but Mihiru makes a noise that scares her, so she hits him again. They go around the school to check if any of the 7 mysteries are true, and they don't find anything, but they end up having a lot of fun. Mihiru mentions that there's another legend about the teacher who disappeared from their school, and it's said that he still appears in the classrooms at night. So they head to a classroom to check if the legend is true, but they're shocked to see a man standing there, and he rushes towards Akira and pins her to the ground. So Mihiru tries to get him away from her, while Yumori wonders what a vampire is doing there. The man notes that he's been restraining himself for a long time, and today was supposed to be his last day, which is why he's angry at them for being there. Yumori grabs a chair and knocks the man down, wondering why he isn't like the other vampires, but Anko suddenly arrives, and she asks Yumori what he's doing there. The man tells them to get away before he loses control, but Anko shows her neck to him, so he loses his mind and jumps towards her. She hugs him instead of getting away, and he bites her neck, but he's disgusted by the taste of her blood. So she realizes that he has never tasted blood before, even though he turned into a vampire 10 years ago. Yumori wonders why he attacked Akira, so Anko explains that it's because he had reached his breaking point, and he couldn't stop himself when they appeared in front of him. Yumori wonders why he didn't drink blood, but Anko tells him to think before he talks, since no one wishes to be a vampire. The man reveals that he was tricked into becoming a vampire, and Anko hugs him to cheer him up, but he starts crying, thinking he was a fool for falling in love with the woman who turned him. Anko notes that she'll let him die as a human, and she puts a ring in his hand, which makes him scream in pain, but she tells him to calm down and remember the time he was a human. The sun finally comes up, which turns the man into dust, and she notes that the teacher who went missing 10 years ago passed away as a human. Yumori wonders why she killed him when he was supposed to die today anyway, which makes her angry, and she asks him if he thinks the man should have lived his life as a monster. She notes that he knows nothing about vampires, and she gives his friends her card, telling them to call her if they find themselves in a dangerous situation. The next day, Yumori goes to meet Nazuna, who's craving his blood, but as she tries to bite his neck, he remembers what happened at the school and pushes her away. She asks him what's wrong, so he tells her everything that happened, and he wonders if she'll also end up like the teacher if she doesn't get blood, but she assures him that it won't happen. They decide to go on a walk, and Nazuna tells him that vampires can live for 10 years without drinking blood, so he doesn't need to worry about her losing control. He mentions that Anko knows he decided to become a vampire, and she's trying to stop him, so Nazuna asks him if he's going to quit. But he explains that he's just worried about her, since Anko knows how to kill vampires, and he mentions how seeing the teacher made him afraid of vampires for the first time. But he still allows her to drink his blood, and while she's feeding on him, he thinks he can manage his emotions to control his fear. After that, Mahiro meets up with Yamori, and they go to deliver flowers to a woman, who invites Mahiro to come inside, but he tells her he'll visit her as a proper customer when he turns 20. Yamori stares at the woman's chest, and he becomes embarrassed when she notices him, so he apologizes for being rude. Mahiro is surprised that Yamori is a pervert, and he thinks anyone would have done the same thing as him, but Mahiro tells him he needs to be discreet. He asks Yamori why he wants to become a vampire, thinking he wants to do it to have fun, and he reminds him about the teacher they met at school. Yamori notes that the teacher was a rare case, but Mahiro mentions that it can also happen to him, and he wonders if Yamori plans to go around and suck people's blood, so that he won't lose control. He mentions that they drifted apart after reaching middle school, so when he ran into Yamori, he was worried that they wouldn't be able to talk to each other like they used to, but he realized they're still friends. He once again asks Yamori what he wants to do by becoming a vampire, and when he thinks about the answer, he realizes that he doesn't know his reasons. Yamori goes to meet Nazuna and hugs her, so she asks him what's wrong with him, and after that, they head to his house, where she immediately starts looking for dirty magazines, but she doesn't find any. She wonders where his parents are, so he mentions that his mother is at work, while his dad doesn't live there after the divorce, so she doesn't need to worry. He realizes that it's the first time he's had a girl in his room after he reached middle school, but she's still focused on finding something dirty. She knows that he met with his friend, so she wonders if he's reconsidered becoming a vampire, telling him a normal person would refuse to do it. She asks him why he wanted to become a vampire in the first place, so he explains that it's because he likes the night, since he can be free during that time. But he notes that he's already having fun as a human, and he knows that she isn't that eager to make him her offspring, so he thinks it's okay if he doesn't become a vampire. He explains that he doesn't care much about himself, but he's worried that he might hurt his friends, so he can't bring himself to do it. Nazuna knows that he finds the night exciting, since it allows him to experience things that are out of the ordinary. But she thinks he isn't as thrilled as the first time he went out at night, since the fun has already become a part of his ordinary life. She reveals that being a vampire is extremely boring, since she spends most of the day waiting for time to pass. But he wonders why she showed him the fun parts, so she explains that it's because she wished being a vampire was like that. She's about to leave, and he tries to stop her, but he accidentally falls on her and turns off the lights. He starts to blush, so she teases him by acting like she's about to kiss him, but she just licks his neck and leaves. After that, Yamori meets up with Anko, who thought he wanted to have a relationship with her, but she realizes that she misread the situation. He's surprised that she's being serious, so she reminds him that she told him to hit on her for real the next time they meet. But he wonders why she's getting mad, so she mentions that she likes the idea of being with a middle schooler. He asks her how much she knows about him, so she starts telling him everything about his life, which causes him to freak out, but she notes that it's all just speculation. He wonders why she's against him becoming a vampire, so she mentions that it's because they're evil beings. She believes that people cause problems for other humans, but she won't let vampires do the same, since it isn't the natural course of things. She reminds him of the teacher in school, asking him if he's sure that he'll be able to drink human blood after he becomes a vampire, since he might end up like the teacher. She wonders why he hasn't fallen in love with Nazuna even though he's always with her, and she thinks he might lack romantic urges, which means he'll never become a vampire. So she doesn't need to worry about him, but she notes that if he doesn't turn, the vampires will eliminate him since he's a liability, and they'll also do the same to Nazuna. She tells him to make his decision, and she assures him that he doesn't need to worry about being hunted by the vampires, since she plans to eliminate all of them. Yamori is against her idea, since he doesn't think vampires are evil, and he doesn't believe that all they cause is misfortune. But she suddenly calls the police, and tells them that a middle-aged boy has been roaming the area alone at night, so she wants them to look for him. Yamori runs away from her, but he's disappointed since he didn't get to ask her anything, and he hears a police siren, so he hides in a playground. He wishes he could talk to Nazuna, but he doesn't want to cause trouble for her, since he knows that Anko already looked into her. Hatsuka manages to find him, and she takes him to her house, where a group of people suddenly come rushing toward them. Yamori is surprised by the way they're acting, since they all want to make her happy, but she tells them to leave the house since she has a guest. They aren't happy hearing this, but they realize that she's getting angry, so they decide to leave. She goes to take a bath, while Yamori still thinks about how Anko didn't give him any information, and she even ruined his night. Hatsuka tells him to get her a towel, but he's shocked when he realizes that she's a boy, and Hatsuka thought Nazuna already told him about it. But he mentions how he never asks her anything, which makes Hatsuka wonder if they aren't on good terms. Meanwhile, Nazuna meets up with the other vampires, and she tells them that Yamori might not turn into one of them, but she asks them to leave him alone even if he decides to stay a human. Nico becomes angry and breaks the table, since it's against their agreement, and she threatens to eliminate Nazuna, but she has no problem with it as long as they don't hurt Yamori. Nico reminds her that killing is forbidden among vampires, so she thinks it will be better if she just eliminates Yamori, but Nazuna threatens to take her out if she does anything to him. At the house, Hatsuka is shocked to learn that Yamori is having second thoughts about becoming a vampire, and he tells Hatsuka about Anko, who was able to kill a vampire. Hatsuka mentions that vampires don't know much about each other, so he doesn't think Nazuna is trying to hide any important information from Yamori. He notes that they also don't know why a human's blood tastes good or bad, but he's heard that Yamori's blood is delicious. So he wants to taste it, reminding Yamori that if he hadn't helped him, he would have been in a lot of trouble. Yamori asks him why he dresses like a girl, so he notes that it's because he looks good in female clothes, explaining that he attracts people from both genders when he dresses that way. Yamori thinks he must have been in love before he became a vampire, so he wonders if Hatsuka ever had conflicting feelings before he turned. But before he can answer, he gets a message showing him the table Nico broke, and Yamori knows that he might be eliminated if he chooses to stay human. Hatsuka tells him there aren't any clear rules among the vampires, so there's no telling what will happen to him and Nazuna. But there will be consequences for his actions, and they sometimes demand harsher consequences from each other. Hatsuka tells him that Nazuna is in more trouble than him, so he tries to go help her, but Hatsuka pushes him back into the chair. He notes that the only way for Yamori to help her is by becoming a vampire, and he proposes that Yamori should become his offspring, thinking he may never fall in love with Nazuna. Hatsuka asks him if he has a problem with him being a male, but Yamori doesn't care about it since he has a cute face, which makes him blush. But he wonders how Hatsuka will turn him into a vampire, since he doesn't love him, so Hatsuka reveals that he'll just brainwash Yamori into falling in love with him. Yamori refuses his offer, since he wants to fall in love with Nazuna, but Hatsuka asks him about his plan, since Nico was angry at them, so there's no telling what she might do. He notes that even though he said Yamori being killed isn't a definite thing, it doesn't mean it won't happen. But Yamori thinks he'll be okay as long as Hatsuka doesn't plan to kill him, and he explains that he isn't prepared to die, but he wants to make sure that Nazuna doesn't get bored. He goes to see Nazuna, but Nico tells him she just left, which relieves him since he thinks she's okay. But Nico notes that she won't be able to have a normal conversation for a while, since she's suffered the consequences in return for his safety, so he wonders what they did to her. He decides to go look for her, and Nico mentions how she told them she doesn't want to see him, but he tells her to be silent. Yamori goes outside, but two police officers find him, so he jumps off the bridge and runs away from them. He realizes that the night isn't fun at all times, and we learn that he's scared, but he's still having fun. Meanwhile, Nazuna wonders if Yamori is mad at her, since she tried to act cool in front of him, even though she doesn't know how to have fun. He manages to find her, but she wonders what he's doing there, and he explains that he has been looking for her since he wanted to see her. She tells him she's fine, and he's surprised that she can still talk to him, since Nico told him that she can't have a normal conversation. He apologizes for causing trouble, but she tells him there's no need to do it, since everything is already over. He notes that he was bored all the time before he met her, but she changed his life for the better, and she mentions that she feels the same way. She thinks she should be the one apologizing to him, since she acted like a know-it-all, even though everything they did was new to her. She prepares to leave, but he grabs her and tells her that everything is new to him as well. He thinks they can't work well if they're alone, so he wants to fall in love with her, and make sure she never gets bored again. He apologizes for getting too excited, and notes that he didn't even pay attention to what he was saying, but she suddenly kisses him, and promises to become a vampire worth falling for. We see Yamori and Nazuna playing video games, but they're interrupted by Nico and Hatsuka, and Nico mentions that she's there to borrow Yamori. But Nazuna refuses to let her have him, so Nico becomes angry, and reminds her that she's the reason they can stay together and enjoy video games. Nazuna tells her to return him safely, and as Nico takes him away, Hatsuka decides to hang out with Nazuna. Nico takes Yamori to meet the rest of the vampires, and she notes that it's their first meeting to make sure he succeeds in his love life. They ask him how things are going with Nazuna, and he mentions that nothing has happened so far, so they tell him they want to help him out. But we learn that they're just trying to get details about his love life, and he tells them he thought they were just trying to get him to gossip, saying he hates people like that the most, which makes them nervous. They ask him if he has ever had a crush, and they become excited when he tells them he never had one, since it means the first person he falls in love with will turn him into a vampire. He thinks they're just using him to entertain themselves, so Nico acts like she's offended, telling him they only want what's best for him. He doesn't know what it feels like to fall in love, and Midori asks him if he finds Nazuna attractive, so he mentions that her face is cute, but it isn't what Midori was hoping to hear. They advise him to tell that to Nazuna, since she'll never know his feelings if he doesn't say anything, and they note that he should tell her she's cute every day. But he blushes hearing this, and they're surprised because he never gets flustered. Midori gets drunk and starts yelling that she needs someone like Yumori as well, and Sari mentions that Midori goes after frustrated virgins, so he's exactly her type, which makes him annoyed. She vows to make him regret the day he rejected her, and he asks them if he can go home, but she mentions that she still wants to know more about him and Nazuna. So Nico reminds him about the time they kissed in front of them, and she wonders if they do it regularly. Meanwhile, Hatsuka takes Nazuna to a shopping mall, and he knows that the reason she didn't go after Yumori is because she needs his advice, since she wants to make Yumori fall in love with her. So he makes her try on a new dress, and explains that her usual fashion isn't bad, but it's too open for a teenage boy like Yumori. After that, they go to a bar, where Nazuna asks Hatsuka for advice on what to do with Yumori, but Hatsuka finds her incredibly cute, so he asks to kiss her, which creeps her out. He mentions how Yumori doesn't get turned on even though he's always with her, which makes her wonder if he isn't attracted to her. She tells Hatsuka about the time they went to a love hotel, which aroused Yumori, but she realizes that it must have been because of the situation. Hatsuka knows that she's interested in romance more than anyone, but she can't express her feelings, which makes her embarrassed, and she tries to convince him that it's not true. She continues to drink beer, and as Yumori arrives, he sees her being knocked out after getting too drunk, so he carries her back home. The next day, as they're sitting on a train, Yumori wonders if it was okay that he left Nico and the others yesterday without saying anything. Nazuna tells him not to worry about it, since they're getting involved in their lives for entertainment, and she thinks he should worry about himself, since he only has 10 months left to fall in love with her. But she still can't say it properly, so she becomes embarrassed, but he's still impressed since she almost said it. He notes that someone told her he might lack romantic urges, and she thinks he has issues, so she takes him to Tokyo to do research. He tells her about the time his school was going on a trip to Tokyo, and the students who couldn't go were jealous, but he never understood why they felt that way. He mentions that he hates people who like Tokyo without any reason, which makes her angry, so she slaps him, and reveals that she came to Tokyo on a whim a while ago. But she didn't have fun since she had no plan, so she had no idea what to do. They go outside a love motel, and Nazuna notes that they'll use the couples there for research, telling him age has nothing to do with romance. He feels like a few of the couples seem immoral, but she thinks romance is a gamble, and no one in their right mind wouldn't take a chance on it, but she becomes embarrassed after saying it. He thinks the men who are trying to pick up girls aren't interested in romance, which makes her angry, since he thinks all of them are just trying to get into a physical relationship. But he thinks she's just trolling him, and she notes that there are people who are just lonely, so they're trying to find someone they can talk to. She tells him to imagine a scenario where two couples are together just to get physical with each other, but after spending time together, they realize that they want a real relationship. She thinks the kind of situation describes her relationship with Yumori perfectly, and she reminds him that feeding on blood for a vampire equals both food and copulation. She thinks she's the pickup artist, while he's the one who fell for her bait, but he looks at the couples, and realizes there's nothing special in romance. He thinks it's what she was trying to get him to understand, and she becomes confused, but she just says yes. After that, they come across a zoo, and Yumori wonders what it looks like at night, so Nazuna grabs him and jumps in. She tells him not to make noise, to make sure the animals don't get disturbed, and after they finish looking around, she asks him what he meant when he said he doesn't like Tokyo. So he explains that he prefers his hometown, and notes that he didn't have any particular reason for it. But after he met her, he realized that he had found a good reason to stay, since even if he isn't with her, he still feels like she's close to him. She mentions that she wanted to come to Tokyo with someone, and she's glad it was him who came with her. She bites his neck to drink blood, and he tries to say that he wants to come there during the day, but he stops himself since they're only active at night. Mahira meets with a girl named Kiku, telling her about his fight with Yumori, and she asks him how it started. So he mentions how Yumori is doing something dangerous, and he refuses to stop doing it, which is why Mahira got angry at him. She wonders if he hates Yumori, but he notes that he can never do that, and reveals that he looks up to him, since he puts his all into anything he does, so she tells Mahira to go make up with him. Meanwhile, Yumori is sitting with Akira on the swings, and she mentions how he got on with a girl right after his childhood friend went through a traumatic experience. She wonders if he would make his own offspring after becoming a vampire, and even though he doesn't know what he'll do, she knows that he will need to feed on blood, so she offers to let him feed on her. Mahiru arrives, and Yamori tells him they'll still be friends after he becomes a vampire, so Mahiru tells him he can feed on his blood if he ever gets hungry. Kiku comes out of hiding, which makes Mahiru embarrassed, but as she shakes hands with Yamori, he realizes that she's a vampire, so he immediately runs away. She catches up to him, and wonders why he smells like a vampire, so he tells her he's decided to become one of them. He knows that vampires deceive humans to turn them into their offspring, and he can't let her do it with Mahiru, but she tells him to keep her identity a secret from Mahiru. He's surprised by how nicely she's asking, since he thought she was there to threaten him, and she tells him she never had any intentions of turning Mahiru. She reveals that she only wants to hang out with him, and the only reason she hasn't told him is that she doesn't think he'll accept her. Yamori thinks she should tell him immediately, and he thinks Mahiru will accept her just like he accepted his decision to become a vampire. But she becomes angry, and warns him against interfering with other people's love lives, and she prepares to attack him, but Mahiru suddenly arrives. She tells him she's a vampire, so he becomes scared, and she decides to leave, telling him she just wants to be with him. Yamori realizes that she really is telling the truth, and he thinks their situation is just like him and Nazuna, which means he just destroyed their perfect relationship. Mahiru stops Kiku from leaving, telling her he doesn't know what to say about her being a vampire, but he knows that he has feelings for her, which makes her think she now has complete control over him. After that, Yamori tells Nazuna about Kiku, and she mentions that Kiku is a mystery, so no one knows how to deal with her. Meanwhile, Mahiru thinks about the first time he met Kiku while delivering flowers, but he's interrupted by Akira, and he tells her everything. She wonders if he'll become a vampire as well, but he hasn't thought about it, and he doesn't understand how Yamori made the decision that easily, so she mentions that it's because he's an idiot. Two of Mahiru's school friends interrupt them, and they ask him why he stopped hanging out with them, so he notes that he doesn't like them anymore. At night, Mahiru meets with Yamori, asking him how he lets Nazuna feed on him, and he's surprised to learn that Kiku hasn't sucked Mahiru's blood. He knows that she has turned a lot of humans into her offspring, but he thinks it's insensitive to tell Mahiru about it, so he calls Hito for help, and Yamori is surprised to see how much cooler he has become. Hatsuka arrives as well, and he reminds Yamori that he isn't supposed to tell humans about vampires, but after smelling Mahiru, Hatsuka realizes that he's just like Yamori. They go to a bathhouse, and as Hatsuka takes off his clothes, Hito and Mahiru are shocked to see that he's a boy. Yamori asks for Hatsuka's advice on Mahiru's situation, and he mentions that it's surprising for Kiku to reveal that she's a vampire. He notes that she has turned a lot of people into her offspring, revealing that he only has 3, and he mentions that most other vampires are satisfied with just having 1, but Kiku has at least 50. He thinks Yamori shouldn't tell Mahiru about it, and Yamori believes that they should give her the benefit of the doubt, since she appears to be taking their relationship seriously. But Hatsuka reminds him that he and Mahiru have no choice but to turn into vampires, since they know about their existence. Meanwhile, Mahiru asks Hito for advice, and he thinks Kiku really cares for Mahiru, so he advises him to wait until she makes a decision. He tells Mahiru to take his time, and think about the joy that his future holds, which makes Mahiru think that Hito is extremely cool. After that, Yamori is surprised to see how smug Mahiru and Hito are acting, and he notices that Hito doesn't have lenses in his glasses. So he reveals that his eyesight has recovered after he turned into a vampire, but he still wears glasses since he feels strange when he doesn't have them on. They prepare to leave, but they see Anko sitting at the receptionist's table, and she tells Hito that she's been looking for him. Yamori tells everyone that she's the detective who can kill vampires, which shocks them, and she notes that she's only after Hito today. Yamori tells him to run away, but she instantly gets close to him and takes off his glasses, and he realizes that she's wearing the ones he used to wear. She makes him wear his old glasses, so he starts sweating, but she takes out her knife and starts stabbing him. So Yamori and Mahiru try to stop her, but she warns them to stay away, telling them she doesn't like killing humans. She knows that Hito won't die from such wounds since he's no longer human, and she asks him about the vampire who turned him, but Ceres suddenly arrives and attacks her. She dodges the attack and tries to hit Hatsuka with her knife, but she's shocked as it goes through his hand. He tells Seri to take the glasses off Hito, and it immediately calms him down, so Hatsuka realizes that an item from a vampire's human past is a weakness against them. Hatsuka destroys Anko's knife, but he starts walking away, and she wonders why they aren't eliminating her, so he mentions that they don't want to kill her. They prepare to leave, but Anko asks Yamori how Nazuna is doing, and she tries to say something about Kiku as well, but she stops herself, and notes that she needs to take her down. After that, Yamori lets Hito drink his blood to make sure his injuries are healed, and he thinks Nazuna will understand, but she becomes angry when he tries to explain it to her. Mahiru thinks he should have been the one who offered his blood, but Yamori tells him that a human has only 1 year to turn after a vampire drinks their blood. Sari asks Nazuna how much she remembers her human life, and Hatsuka mentions how vampires forget their human past after a while. But Anko is digging into their past to find their weaknesses, so they need to do something to stop her. Nazuna tells them she has no memory of her past, and before they leave, she tells Hito to live a long life since he drank Yumori's blood. After they leave, Yumori wonders who Nazuna fell in love with when she was a human, but she becomes embarrassed and tells him to stop, telling him she doesn't remember anything. So he thinks they should investigate her past to find any weaknesses, since he doesn't want her to be eliminated. Meanwhile, Sari talks with Hito about his old glasses, and she recalls that he was wearing them when he first met her, but he's sad since he'll forget the time they spent together when he was human. She mentions that she'll never forget, so he doesn't need to worry, and they'll just make new memories together, which makes him cry. After that, they meet up with Miko and the others, and she tells them to find their weakness from the past, so that they can destroy it. She mentions that they should never be alone, and she warns them against going after Anko, since she seems to know a lot about them. But Nico doesn't like the fact that Anko has the upper hand on them, so she thinks they should look into her. Meanwhile, Nazuna and Yumori search her apartment to see if they can find something, and he keeps asking her if she can remember anything. But she mentions that she has no memories of her time as a human, and notes that it's like asking a 60-year-old what he was doing when he was 10, so Yumori wonders if she's really that old. She mentions that her memory when she became a vampire is hazy, so she doesn't know how old she is, but when he keeps asking her about it, she yells at him not to ask a woman's age. She reveals that she's between 30 to 40 years old, and she's embarrassed since she thinks it sounds lame, thinking it would have been cool if she were hundreds of years old. She thinks it will be difficult for him to fall in love with someone who's the same age as his mother, but he doesn't think it's that old. He asks her about the first memory she has after becoming a vampire, so she notes that it was her waking up in the room they're currently in, and he finds a patient's ID card from 30 years ago. So they go to the hospital, but Nazuna still doesn't remember anything, and as they go inside to look around, she mentions that the hospital must be haunted, but he just ignores her and starts searching. She keeps trying to convince him, but they suddenly hear a noise, so she freaks out and jumps onto Yumori, telling him they should get out of there. He thinks they need to keep investigating, and notes that it will be more troublesome if they run into a human, since they're trespassing into the hospital. They keep looking around to find where the noise is coming from, and they end up running into someone, which scares them, but it turns out to be Kabura. She reveals that she works there as a nurse, but Nazuna can't believe that someone like her who looks down on everyone else is working to help other people. Yumori shows her the patient ID card, but she has no idea who it belongs to, and she tells them to leave before she reports them. But he thinks she's hiding something, so he asks for her permission to let them investigate. Kabura agrees to their request, and she dresses them up like a patient and a nurse to make sure they don't get caught, but she doesn't tell them what she knows. She gives them permission to look around, but she warns them that there's a room at the end of the 3rd floor, which is off limits since a ghost is said to be living there. But they go to check out the room, and Nazuna is scared since she believes what Kabura told them. He thinks Kabura is hiding something, but she doesn't want to keep it a secret, and she needs them to find it on their own. They decide to look around the hospital, and Nazuna mentions that she thought Kabura's condition was to get a taste of Yumori's blood, so she was ready to beat her up. They search the internet about the ghost, and they find that someone saw a woman dressed like a nurse go straight through the door, which makes Nazuna think Kabura was telling the truth. But Yumori realizes that the ghost is Kabura, and he thinks there's something related to Nazuna in the room. They realize that they can go inside, but he refuses to enter, since Kabura told them to stay away from it. Nazuna mentions that Kabura loves getting on her nerves, and Yumori asks her how long they've known each other. But she tells him she doesn't remember, which makes him wonder if they had a special relationship in the past. He goes to the bathroom, where Kabura suddenly takes him away, and Nazuna gets tired of waiting for him outside, so she decides to go in, but she's scared seeing that no one is there. She tries looking for him, but she sees a strange creature coming towards her, so she runs away and accidentally goes into the forbidden room, where she sees a picture of her and Kabura. Meanwhile, Kabura tells Yumori she plans to make him her offspring, but he notes that he won't let anyone other than Nazuna turn him. He thinks she's the one who turned Nazuna into a vampire, but she tells him it isn't true, which makes him embarrassed. Nazuna arrives and shows them the picture she found, and she mentions that Kabura is her offspring, but she tells Nazuna she's also wrong, which makes her embarrassed as well. After seeing the picture, Kabura realizes that she went into the room even though she told them to stay out, so she makes Nazuna apologize. Kabura takes them to the room, and mentions that when a vampire drinks a person's blood, they also understand what that person is thinking. So she takes out her blood, revealing that it was extracted from her when she was still human, and she tells Nazuna to drink it. We see that Kabura was a patient at the hospital, and she suddenly gets a nosebleed, so a nurse named Haru, who looks exactly like Nazuna, comes to check up on her. She thinks Kabura must be waiting to be discharged so that she can go on a trip with her friends, but she tells Haru that they've already left, since there's no telling when she'll be released from the hospital. She mentions that it's a normal situation for her since she's always sick, so Haru offers to go with her after she gets discharged. After a while, as Kabura is about to be released, she becomes sad since she won't be able to see Haru anymore, so they take a picture to remember the time they spent together. Kabura returns to her normal life, but when she meets up with her friends, she realizes that they have new boys in their group, and one of them tries to hit on her. But her friend tells him she isn't interested in boys, and she becomes uncomfortable, so she goes to the bathroom. She overhears them badmouthing her, which makes her sick once again, and she goes back to the hospital, where Haru asks her if she was able to go out with her friends. She becomes angry when Kabura tells her what happened, but she still thinks her friends didn't mean to hurt her. But Haru hugs her, telling her she shouldn't need to go through such things, since her life is already hard. She asks Kabura what she wants to become, and even though she doesn't have an answer, Haru tells her to say whatever comes to her mind, or people won't know what she's thinking. One of Kabura's friends visits her in the hospital, and she apologizes for what happened, telling her they'll do whatever she wants once she gets out, but Kabura has no idea where she wants to go. Her friend gives her different ideas, but Kabura tells her to go without her, since she doesn't have the energy to do things they like. At night, Kabura goes up to the roof, where she sees Haru smoking, and she starts crying, as she mentions that she hates everything. She notes that she just wants to live a normal life, but she wonders if she'll always be surrounded by things she hates, and Haru asks her if she's in love with someone. But she mentions that she doesn't understand her feelings, so Haru notes that she should tell her about it. Kabura tells her to stop being mean, since Haru already knows who she loves, and Haru bites her to turn her into a vampire. They go drinking in the city, where two boys try to hit on them, and they decide to join them for a drink, but they laugh as the boys pass out. Haru tells Kabura that the director of the hospital has agreed to hire her, since they're also a vampire, and she promises to work hard. At the hospital, Haru gives her human blood, but she tells Kabura that she needs to start hunting, since the hospital doesn't have an endless supply. We return to the present, as Kabura notes that she saved her blood when she was human, and she sips it regularly to make sure she doesn't forget her past. Nazuna asks her who Haru is, but Kabura wants to do her hair before she says anything, and we go back to when Haru and Kabura meet up in a restaurant. Haru reveals that she plans to get married, which makes Kabura spit out her beer on the waiter, but he doesn't mind it since he finds her cute. She thinks Haru must be marrying a vampire, but she reveals that it's a human, which makes her spit the beer on the waiter again. Haru tells her it's because she's already pregnant, and Kabura spits the beer on the waiter for the third time, but he still doesn't get angry since he likes her. After a while, Kabura gets a goodbye letter from Haru, who asks her to look after her daughter, revealing that she's part human and part vampire, so there's no telling what she will grow up to be. Haru is sad that she won't be there to see her daughter grow up, and she apologizes to Kabura for asking such a favor, but she's the only one Haru can trust. Kabura goes to a room that Haru mentioned, and as she enters it, she sees Nazuna waking up, and she's shocked to see that she looks exactly like Haru. Back in the present, Kabura tells Nazuna that she's part human and part vampire, revealing that she's been taking care of her since Haru asked her to do it. Yumori realizes that Nazuna never fell in love with anyone since she was born a vampire, but Nazuna wonders why she can't remember her past if she was never a human. Kabura notes that when she found Nazuna, she was just like an infant and she had no self-awareness. So Kabura had to teach her how to feed and talk, but it was difficult for her since she had no experience raising a child. Kabura decides to leave, and tells them never to come back, since seeing Nazuna's face brings back bad memories, saying the time they spent together was torture for her. Yumori thinks it's great that Nazuna was never a human, since it means she doesn't have a weakness that Anko can use against her. But Nazuna mentions how she always gets annoyed after seeing Kabura, and she realizes that the feeling is mutual, while Kabura wonders if she did a good job fulfilling Haru's request. Yumori comes to meet her before leaving, and he asks her if she was lying about being annoyed by Nazuna, since he thinks she's a kind person, but she assures him she was telling the truth. He can sense that when she was talking to Nazuna, she was worried about the kind of people Nazuna was hanging out with, just like a mother. So Kabura notes that even though it may be true, she tells him to stop acting like he knows her, since she thinks it's insulting to her. She mentions that Haru was her first love, and the only reason she drinks blood is to find out why Haru fed on her. So she thinks she's a lost cause, telling Yumori not to be like her, and she notes that he should build a healthy relationship with Nazuna. After that, Nazuna tells Yumori that Kabura really does feel irritated when she sees her, since the love of her life was knocked up by a human, and she got stuck with raising their child, who looks just like Haru. The next day, they go back to the hospital, where Nazuna asks Yumori if he's glad that she was born a vampire, since she knows that men like their women to be untouched. Kabura sees her and reminds them that she warned them to never return, but before they can say anything, she dresses them up as a nurse and a patient once again. Nazuna wonders why she keeps doing it, and she remembers how she always feels anxious around Kabura since she looks at her in a passionate way. Kabura notes that they should get close to each other to make sure they can talk easily, so she tells Nazuna to sit on her lap, which makes her scared. They tell Kabura about the vampire's weakness, but she notes that she already had suspicions about it, since she feels weird whenever she's in the Forbidden Room, which contains items from her human past. Most of them aren't that significant, and the foil of her and Haru was developed after she got turned into a vampire, so they only give her headaches, but she still needs to get rid of them. Yumori asks her if she needs help, but she reveals that she has her own offspring who will do anything for her. So he just tells her to be careful of the detective, and she wonders why Anko is after the vampires, so he tells her it's because she thinks they're evil. As Nazuna is flying through the city with Yumori, he wonders what happened in Anko's past that made her hate vampires, thinking it has something to do with her first encounter with them. Meanwhile, Anko goes to the hospital, where she breaks into the off-limits room, but she realizes that it's already been cleaned out. Kabura realizes that someone broke into the room, while Anko is disappointed since she missed her chance, but she tells herself to be patient, since there are more ways to kill a vampire. Kabura meets up with Yumori and Nazuna, telling them Anko came to the hospital, and she's glad that they warned her, since Anko could have killed her if she didn't remove her belongings. She notes that even though she doesn't have any attachment to her life, she still hasn't fulfilled her promise to Haru, and she tells Nazuna to hurry up and turn someone into her offspring. She reveals that both of Nazuna's parents have passed away, and she notes that Haru was in a weakened state after she gave birth, since she refused to drink blood after she married a human. Nazuna's father told Kabura about Haru's death, but he also passed away after a short while, and she mentions that he seemed like a good man. After Kabura leaves, Nazuna notes that there's nothing to be sad about, since she never knew her parents. She mentions that she's been remembering parts of her past thanks to Kabura and Yumori, and she recalls her favorite spot, so she takes Yumori there. They can see the entire city from there, and she notes that the first time she came there, she had no idea what the lights were. But she eventually realized that there's a human behind each of them, so whenever she felt uncertain, she went there to calm herself down by watching people. The first question that came to her mind was what humans are, and she also wondered why she isn't one of them, but she suddenly holds Yumori's hand, which makes him blush. He mentions that if she were a human, they would have never met, and he reminds her that they'll live a long life, so they'll find new favorite spots together. After that, they go with Midori to find out a weakness from her past, and Nazuna is excited to meet Weebs, but Midori tells her she won't find such people anymore. Midori tells her to go back, but Nazuna reminds her that she can't go looking for her weakness alone, so she mentions that she'll be fine since she already has a lead. She takes them to meet one of her offspring named Love, and hearing him talk makes Nazuna excited, because she can tell that he's an otaku. She wonders why Midori never introduced him to the others, so he notes that it isn't her fault, since most of the vampires are beautiful, but he's far from handsome. Yumori thinks she's horrible if it's really true, but she explains that she kept him hidden since he's extremely nice. So if everyone gets to know him, they'll keep inviting him to their gatherings, which will pull him away from her. She notes that he fell for her the first time they met, and when she asked him what he would do if she were a vampire, he immediately told her to turn him into one as well. Love tells them that as a student, he could never fit in with everyone else, but Midori never judged him for it, so he wants to be with her forever. She tells him how Anko has discovered the vampire's weakness, and he mentions that after he met Midori, he looked into her background, so he knows things about her that she doesn't even know. He's sad that he needs to destroy everything from her past, but he knows that it's necessary to keep her safe, and Yumori tells him he needs to find his own weakness as well. So Love reveals that he also did an investigation on his background, but he refuses to tell them anything, which annoys Midori. Nazuna asks him why he's fat, so he mentions that it's because he eats fatty ramen twice a week, which shocks her since vampires don't have an appetite for anything other than blood. He reveals that after he turned into a vampire, his body still led him to the ramen shop, and he started eating without thinking about whether it tasted good or bad. So he thinks it must be because it was a routine for him when he was a human, and he shows her a picture of when he was young, but Midori yells at them since they have gone off topic. Yumori thinks his weakness must be related to Midori, and Love tries to act like he has no clue about it, but she knows that he's lying, since he looks away from her whenever he isn't telling the truth. Yumori realizes that if they just start saying things, they're bound to find his weakness based on his reaction, so they start listing things related to Midori, but he gives them no reaction. She recalls that he wanted to publish a doujinshi, and seeing his reaction confirms her suspicion that his weakness is related to it. She realizes that it's a dirty fanfic related to her. After practicing for a while, he finally made 500 copies of something he liked, but he couldn't even sell one copy. After he turned into a vampire, he found the copies, but when he tried reading them, he absolutely lost it since he couldn't believe how bad the art was. But after what Midori told him, he realized that his body was hurting when he read it, since it's his physical weakness. They burn all the copies, which makes him cry, but Nazuna mentions that she read it, and she tells him that even though the art was bad, it still expressed his feelings. So he can always make another copy, but Midori tells her to stop encouraging him. After they return home, Nazuna asks Yumori what self-discovery really is, so he mentions that it's something a person looks for when they have no idea what they're doing in life. She thinks that after going on a journey, someone might realize that happiness lies in their roots, which she thinks is embarrassing. But he notes that it's like a trip where someone tries to get away from everything, and in the end, they realize that they can only truly relax in their home. She understands what he's trying to say, and she thinks it isn't embarrassing for her to try and find herself, so she takes him to a school. Yumori asks Nazuna if she went to that school, or if vampires can even attend it, but she has no idea, which makes him wonder why she took him there. She thinks she attended the school 10 years ago, and he's surprised that she can't even remember anything about it, which makes her angry. They start arguing with each other, but she suddenly kisses him and tells him to relax, since she remembers things from 10 years ago, but she notes that something bad happened in the school. They go inside, and Yumori is surprised to see a class taking place, so Nazuna reveals that it's a night school. She mentions that Nico is teaching the class, but she's shocked when she notices them staring at her, and she asks them what they're doing there. So Nazuna explains that she's trying to discover herself, and she assures Nico that their goal isn't to make fun of her for giving motivation to humans. They tell her what they learned from Kabura, but Nico mentions that she needs more info, and she tells them to sit in her class as students for the time being. Nico tells Nazuna to introduce herself, but she becomes nervous, and she's about to tell everyone she's a vampire, so Nico stops her. Yumori also introduces himself, and everyone thinks he's amazing, but Nazuna can't believe how much better he is compared to her. After class, everyone gathers around Yumori, while Nazuna goes to meet Nico, since she can't understand why he's so popular, even though she's the vampire. Nico is surprised that she has started caring about such things, but she thinks it's a good change, and she asks Nazuna if she remembers a girl named Majero, who was the first human she thought about turning. Meanwhile, Yumori goes into the literature club, where he finds Majero's diary, and he's surprised to see the things she's written about Nazuna. He goes to ask Nico about it, so she reveals that Majero is Nazuna's first human friend. He asks Nazuna about it, and she mentions that she didn't want to tell him about it, but since he found out, she takes him to Majero's house, where her parents were killed in front of her by a vampire. In a flashback from 10 years ago, we see Nazuna as she first attends the school, and as she introduces herself, everyone starts laughing at her since she's nervous. After class, she goes to the literature club, where she meets Majero for the first time, and she decides to hang out there. She ends up falling asleep, and as she wakes up, she sees that Majero is about to kiss her, so she freaks out, asking her if she likes girls. But Majero thinks it doesn't matter, since a person can fall in love with anyone, and she tells Nazuna that she's late for class. But she doesn't care, since she didn't have any fun there, and she reveals that it's her first time attending school, which makes Majero laugh. Nazuna is annoyed that even she's laughing at her, so she tells Nazuna she can leave if she's angry at her, but she decides to stay. Majero recommends a novel to Nazuna, and after reading it, she slams it on the table, which makes Majero think she hates it, but Nazuna asks her if there are more books like it. After reading the novels, Nazuna notes that she'll become a detective when she grows up, but Majero tells her she's too stupid to do that. She mentions how detectives in real life don't do cool stuff like in the novels, which shocks Nazuna, but Majero tells her she's just joking. Nazuna sees a boy asking Majero out, but she turns him down so harshly that it makes him cry. Nazuna tells Majero that she didn't need to be so mean, telling her she seems to be too harsh on boys, which surprises her since she didn't think Nazuna was capable of feeling sympathy. She reveals that she hates her father, since he's always fighting with his mother about whether he's cheating, which usually ends with her mother in tears. Nazuna asks her to repeat it since she doesn't understand it, which surprises Majero, and she mentions that her family doesn't get along. But Nazuna has a hard time imagining it, since she doesn't have a family, and she's glad that Majero doesn't go home like normal people, or else they wouldn't have met each other. Nazuna thinks they should investigate her father, so Majero dresses her up in a school uniform, telling her she needs to blend into the crowd. She explains that even though they want to wear full detective gear, they can't do that or else they'll stand out, but Nazuna tells her to look at herself, since she's fully dressed up for the role. They go to Majero's father's room, and she mentions that she and her mother sleep in the living room, revealing that she asked for a separate room, but her request was denied. Nazuna accidentally turns on the computer, but it asks for a password, so Majero types in her parents' birthdays, which turn out to be incorrect. Nazuna wonders if it's Majiro's birthday, and she thinks a lousy parent like her father would never do such a thing, but she manages to log into the computer. She starts looking at the files, but she doesn't find anything suspicious, and as she clicks on a folder, she sees pictures from her childhood, which make her embarrassed. They keep looking around the room and find a locked drawer, which Majiro easily opens, and they see the lighter that she gave her father, so Nazuna thinks he might be treasuring it. Majiro notices that it has never been used, so she thinks he didn't want to use something she gave him, but Nazuna notes that he might have quit smoking. Majiro's mom returns home, which startles them, and Majiro tells Nazuna to hide. She tries to distract her mother, who hears something in her father's room, so she thinks he's back, but when she goes to check it out, it turns out to be empty. Majiro tells Nazuna she hid her shoes, and Nazuna mentions that she acts like a criminal, but they start laughing since even though they almost got caught, they still had fun. After that, they go to a cafe near Majiro's father's workplace, and Nazuna asks her why cheating is bad, so she notes that marriage is a contract, and anyone who breaks the rules deserves to be punished. But she reveals that it isn't the reason why she hates her father, and she notes that he chose another woman over them and destroyed their family. She mentions that she couldn't make friends, so she loved her family more than anything, but her father took that away from her, and it makes her feel bad. Nazuna becomes angry, and she mentions that she hates it when Majiro feels bad, so they need to get her family back even if her father isn't cheating. He suddenly enters the cafe, so Nazuna tells Majiro to hide under the table until he goes away, and she keeps an eye on him, but he doesn't do anything suspicious. She starts to follow him as he leaves, but he calls a cab and is about to get away, so she runs after him, but she smashes into something and gets blown away. She apologizes to Majiro for losing sight of her father, but she's surprised to see that Nazuna's hands are bleeding, so she mentions that she tripped while running after the car. Majiro tries to bandage her up, but she's shocked to see that Nazuna's hands have already healed, so she reveals that she's a vampire. Majiro asks her what makes her different from humans, but she has no idea, and Majiro wonders if she can also become a vampire. So Nazuna notes that she needs to fall in love with a vampire first, but they both think that will never happen. The next day, Nazuna covers up her body to hide from the sunlight, so Majiro realizes that she really is a vampire. Before going to school, Majiro decides to go back home, since she needs to tell her parents why she spent the whole night out. At the school, Nazuna returns the clothes she borrowed from Majiro, and she asks her if her parents were angry at her, but Majiro notes that they didn't say anything. She starts to cry, because she realized her parents don't care for her anymore, and she asks Nazuna to help her. So she tells Majiro to fall in love with her and turn into a vampire, which makes her laugh, but she still allows Nazuna to feed on her. After that, Nazuna reveals that Majiro is the first person she's ever drunk blood from who wasn't asleep, and she asks Nazuna if she can kiss her, so she mentions that she'll allow it if she feels like it. She flies Majiro to her home, which makes her scared, but she also enjoys the experience. As Majiro heads inside, her father apologizes for everything he's done to her, telling her he'll do anything to make things right. She asks him about his affair, but he assures her that he ended that relationship because he realized what truly matters to him. Her mom also apologizes for neglecting her, and she notes that she should have taken better care of her, which makes her cry. After that, Majiro's father buys a birthday cake for her, and he asks her what she wants as her gift, but she's just glad that he's with her. She wonders why he doesn't use the lighter she gifted him, so he notes that he's scared that he might lose it, since he loves it a lot. He decides to finally start using it, but as he lights a cigarette, he can sense that something is off, and he accidentally drops the lighter. Majiro returns it to him, but he suddenly starts losing his mind and hits her, so her mother becomes angry at him, but he starts sucking the blood out of her neck, which ends up killing her. He doesn't understand what's going on, and he thinks he must be dreaming, but he goes after Majiro next. She punches his face, and he thinks it really is all just a dream, because he doesn't feel any pain. She grabs the lighter and charges at him, telling him she always wanted her own room, and the next day, Nazuna arrives at her house. But she sees Majiro playing with the lighter, and she's surrounded by the dead bodies of her parents. She asks Nazuna if she could have killed her by sucking her blood, and she admits that it's possible if she sucked her dry. But Majiro just walks past her and says goodbye, telling her she can never become a vampire. She leaves to go to school, and she puts on her dad's glasses, as we see that she became Anko. In the present, Yumori and Nazuna run into Anko, and he doesn't understand what she's doing there, so Nazuna tells him she's Majiro. She tells Anko that someone else is living in her house, so she notes that its rent is extremely cheap because of what happened there in the past. She mentions that she's there to talk to Yumori, revealing that her goal is to eliminate vampires, and she doesn't want to hurt humans. So she gives him another chance to reconsider his decision, but he tells her that he has already decided to spend the rest of his life with Nazuna. After that, Nazuna tells the rest of the vampires about Anko's past, and Kabura is surprised that Nazuna had a friend. Sari asks her why she didn't say anything before, because keeping that information a secret almost led to Hito getting killed. So Nazuna apologizes to everyone and explains that she wasn't sure if the detective was Anko. She wished Anko was living happily somewhere, which is why she didn't even bother to find out what she was up to, but since everything is her fault, she offers to take care of it. Everyone's surprised by how much Nazuna has changed, since she never opened up to them, and Nico learns that they've destroyed their weaknesses, but she still tells them to stay on guard. The next day, as Yumori is walking through the city, he remembers how Anko uses something from a vampire's human life to eliminate them. But since Nazuna was born a vampire, he's worried that there must be another way to kill her, and he runs into Akira, so he asks her how Mahiru is doing. She mentions that he's usually asleep in class, and she thinks he must be busy helping his family shop, because it's almost Halloween. Yumori recalls that Anko's family was destroyed on that day, so he's worried that she might make a move, and he tells Nico about it. But she doesn't think Anko will try anything in a huge crowd, since she refuses to hurt humans, but she still thanks Yumori for the info. On the day of Halloween, a man is hitting on a girl, so Anko punches him away and reminds him that he's married. She threatens him with her gun, so he becomes scared and promises to change his ways, but it turns out that her gun is just a lighter. She uses it to light her cigarette and promises that she won't tell his wife about his activities if he does something for her. In the Halloween festival, Yumori and Akira run into Midori, who invites Akira to her cafe, but she's annoyed that they aren't cosplaying, so she dresses them up as a vampire and a maid. Midori is shocked by how big Akira's chest is, which makes her embarrassed, so Hatsuka tells her not to be weird. They meet up with all the vampires Yumori knows, and they see Nazuna with Nico, who sees that he's dressed up as a vampire, so she wishes him luck, hoping he becomes a real vampire in the future. She starts looking around the festival to see if she can find someone to turn into her offspring, but she's interrupted by Anko, who's wearing a costume to hide her identity. She suddenly shoots Nico in the head, which makes her fall to the ground, and Anko quickly disappears. Everyone starts looking at Nico, and she gets back up, but she has no idea what just happened, so two boys tell her she was shot, but they think she was just shooting a film. They tell her where the shooter went, and they ask her for her number, but she refuses to get involved with minors. Yumori sees Anko running past him, so he decides to go after her, which confuses Akira. Meanwhile, Sari asks Hito if there's anyone in the crowd he likes, but he notes that she's the only one for him. She tells him that he needs to start feeding on his own, but he mentions that he's still in love with her, and he notes that he wants to see her wear a Halloween costume. But Anko appears in front of them in another cosplay, and shoots her in the head, before disappearing once again. Nico sees Yumori running in the crowd, so she tells him he was right, since Anko was shooting vampires today, but he wonders why she would do that, since she knows that bullets can't kill them. They meet up with Sari and Hito, and Sari notes that it's time to eliminate Anko, thinking she shot them in the middle of a crowd, since she knows that they can't fight back in front of other people. Nico agrees with her, and she tells Yumori that they don't like killing humans, but they won't hesitate to do it if it's necessary. Hito is also angry that Anko shot the woman he loves, and he tells Yumori that he shouldn't try to stop them while they go after her. Hito manages to find Anko, and he immediately rushes towards her, but she easily dodges all of his attacks. She throws sand in his eyes and traps him in a trash can, before pushing him back, and she runs away while he's stuck. She keeps stopping to catch her breath, and she ends up going to her old school, where she finds Nazuna sitting in their class. Nico asks Yumori what he thinks they should do, so he notes that he just doesn't want anyone to die, and he knows that vampires think they need to kill to survive. But he wonders why they never did anything against Anko if it's true, so Nico explains that it's because they didn't know anything about her. She thinks it's the perfect chance to eliminate Anko since she's trying to kill them, but he thinks she's lying, and he believes that all of them hate the idea of having to kill someone. He notes that it's the reason why he likes all of them, since they're more human than a lot of people, and he asks for Nico's help, since he wants to save Anko. He reveals that he's been trying to find out her motive, since she wouldn't be using non-lethal shots if she wanted to kill them, and he thinks her goal is to end the night. Meanwhile, Hito tells Sari that he didn't get the feeling that Anko was trying to eliminate him, and he thinks she might be trying to manipulate them into thinking her goal is to end their lives. At the school, Anko mentions that she has done all kinds of experiments on a vampire she caught, but she realized that she can't kill them with brute force. She attacks Nazuna with her knife, and she dodges it, but Anko punches her away and takes out her gun. She shoots Nazuna in the eye, and as she kicks her away, she notes that even though Nazuna will heal after a while, it will still hurt a lot. Anko tells her she shouldn't drag a 14-year-old boy into her business, and Anko decides to kill him first. Nazuna rushes towards her, but she jumps out of the window and starts running away. Nazuna wonders why she's relieved that Anko didn't get hurt after jumping from the 3rd floor, but she tells herself to focus, or else Anko will end up killing Yumori. She jumps towards Anko, who dodges her attack, and she thinks all vampires are stupid since all they do is rush straight towards her. Nazuna keeps trying to hit her, but she can't get a hold of her, and Anko tells her that if she doesn't hurry, Yamori will end up dying. Nazuna mentions that she didn't tell him where they are, so there's no way Anko can get to him, but she shows Nazuna that she already sent him their location, so she gets distracted. Anko kicks her stomach, so she falls to the ground, and Anko tells her that Yamori will end up dying since she's weak. But she knows that Anko can't hurt him while she's fighting her, so she realizes that Anko was never going after him. She asks Nazuna what makes her think that's the case, so she notes that Anko is talking too much, and if killing him was really her goal, she wouldn't have shown the message. Anko kicks dirt into her eyes and smashes her to the ground, telling Nazuna it doesn't matter what she thinks, since her goal is to get rid of the vampires. Anko mentions that she'll kill Yamori if he gets in her way, so Nazuna gets away from her and starts throwing anything she can get her hands on towards Anko, who realizes she has finally gotten serious. She dodges everything and goes back into the school, so Nazuna follows her inside, and Anko tries to ambush her with a baseball bat, but Nazuna disarms her. Anko tries to attack Nazuna with her knife, but she throws Anko to the ground, and she starts crying, telling her she doesn't want to kill her. Yamori suddenly arrives, which shocks Anko, since the message she sent him was to stop him from looking for her. She told him to never trust vampires, and she thinks he might never become one just like her, telling him to imagine what it would be like if he can't turn. She mentions that he's still young, so even if he never becomes a vampire, he should still enjoy his life. Anko tries to shoot Yamori, so Nazuna attacks her, and she thinks it isn't fair, since if Anko acts like that, Nazuna would need to end her life. She rushes towards Anko, but Yamori pushes her out of the way, and he's about to tell Nazuna that she never really wanted to hurt him, but she hits him and points the gun at him. Nazuna begs her to stop, and she notes that Yamori is her friend, but Anko reminds her that she was her friend as well. Nazuna apologizes to him, since they wouldn't be in such a situation if she had taken care of Anko. But he tells her not to worry, and he knows that Anko won't hurt him, because her goal is to die by Nazuna's hands. She tells him to stop talking, and Nazuna is confused since Anko told her she sent him their location, but he tells her that isn't true. He notes that Anko's goal is to be killed by a vampire, so that when people find her body, they will realize that she's the girl who disappeared 10 years ago, and they'll look deeper into her parents' case. He thinks she must have left something to prove the existence of vampires, so that people will learn about them and stop coming out at night. He knows that she planned to use her death to make the vampires starve to death, and she notes that the night is better when it's quiet, so she didn't care what she had to do to achieve that. But proving that vampires exist isn't easy, since they turn to dust after dying, and even if she went on TV to make a huge fuss about it, people would just think she's crazy. So she thought the footage of her death would give them enough proof, and she reveals that she spent the last decade thinking about how to kill vampires. But she realized that she couldn't eliminate all of them on her own, which is why she came up with a plan to starve them to death. She admits that her plan has failed, and he asks her what she'll do next, but she tells him she has no idea, and as she leaves, she mentions how she wanted Nazuna to be the one who kills her. Nazuna suddenly falls to her knees, and she apologizes to Yamori, because even when she thought Anko was going to hurt him, she still couldn't bring herself to kill her. She starts crying, and he mentions that he also didn't want Anko to die, but he notes that they need to go after her. She goes to the literature club, where she takes her gun and prepares to take her own life, but Yamori suddenly arrives, and he tries to take the gun away from her, but he ends up getting shot. Yamori wakes up in a hospital, where Kabura suddenly starts taking off his clothes, but he doesn't remember what happened to him, so she tells him to ask the two people who were with him. He recalls that he was shot, but he thinks he must have just imagined it, since he isn't in pain. He falls asleep, and as he wakes up, he sees Anko sitting beside him, and she apologizes for what happened, so he realizes that she really shot him. We see that when Yamori was shot, Nazuna gets angry at Anko, who starts to cry, saying it was an accident. She apologizes to Nazuna, who decides to take him to Kabura's hospital, but they're shocked when he suddenly stands up. In the present, Yamori wonders if he has turned into a vampire, so she pulls out a gun, telling him they should test it, but it's just her lighter. She reveals that she took his pulse, and confirmed that he's still human, telling him she missed her chance to die thanks to him. She notes how she spent most of her life trying to eliminate the vampires, since she let her hatred for one of them spread to all the others, but she knew that it was the only thing that kept her going. She has fantasized about dying several times, but she knows that she's afraid of it, since all of her anger is a lie, and she notes that she doesn't have anything to do anymore. So she's just a shell of a woman who never achieved anything, and she thinks her life was a mistake, since she let everything she wanted slip away from her, so she tells him not to end up like her. He notes that a 40-year-old woman is still young, and since she's still only 28, she still has a long life ahead of her. He realizes that it's her special day, so he wishes her a happy birthday, which makes her laugh, because it's been 10 years since someone has wished that for her. Anko meets with Nazuna on the roof, and she mentions that she went to apologize to Yumori, but he ended up cheering her up. She wishes she could have fallen in love with Nazuna, who apologizes to her since she isn't that lovable. Meanwhile, Yumori tells Nico everything about Anko, and she thinks her plan was impossible to achieve, so it was just a drawn-out attempt to take her own life. He wonders if he had the right to stop her, but Nico thinks that if she really wanted to end her life, she would have done it a long time ago. She tells him to visit her class one more time, and as she leaves, he thinks about how he saved Anko since he didn't want Nazuna to feel sad. We see Anko going to the Halloween parade, where she once again runs into the man she beat up, and he invites her to drink with him. So she mentions that she prefers to stay alone, but she decides to accept his offer, telling him she won't tell his wife. At the hospital, Nazuna hugs Yumori and apologizes since she couldn't do anything, but he hugs her back, so she starts blushing. He tells her that she shouldn't be sad since everyone survived, so she kisses him and thanks him for everything he has done for her. After that, they go to Kabura for a checkup, and she discharges him from the hospital since he's completely healed. So Nazuna celebrates, but he doesn't understand how he's completely fine, since he just got shot yesterday. They call Anko to get her opinion, and they notice that she cut her hair, which makes them wonder if they should say something. But she notes that she'll leave if they have nothing to talk about, so they take her to a bar. Nazuna is annoyed since Anko didn't order alcohol, and she mentions how she thought they could finally have a drink together and talk about their past, so Anko orders a beer. She asks them if they notice anything different, and they realize that she wants them to notice her hair, but they aren't sure if they should say anything, since they ignored it when they first saw her. So Yumori notes that her hair looks good, which makes her happy, and she mentions how she went to a hairdresser for the first time, since she's decided to live like a normal human. She notes that Yumori made her do it since he told her that he still considers her young, which makes Nazuna angry, and she hits his head, but Anko assures her that she won't take him away from her. Yumori asks Anko what's happening to his body, so she teases him, telling him that if he's worried about his private parts changing, he shouldn't care since it happens to everyone. Nazuna can't believe what she's saying, so she notes that she's talking about his fangs, asking Nazuna if she thought the topic was about something else. She tells Yumori he's still a human, but he doesn't understand why his wound healed so quickly, and he shows his stomach to her. But she starts touching him, and it causes him to blush, so Nazuna tells her to stop since it's indecent. Anko thinks he turned into a vampire for a moment, since his emotions were heightened when he got shot, which made him feel love for Nazuna. He thinks he just deluded himself, but she tells him that most people who are in love are delusional, and she apologizes to him for saying that he doesn't have romantic urges. She gets drunk and asks them how far they have gone with each other, telling them that given Yumori's current condition, they should go all the way with each other quickly. She tells them to at least kiss, but she realizes that they've already done it, so she tells them to take their relationship to the next level. Nazuna thinks the way Anko is acting like her old self makes her look cute, which causes her to blush, so she orders more beer to deal with the situation. After that, they carry Anko back to Nazuna's apartment, where she asks them for water. But when both of them are about to go buy it, she suddenly stops them, telling them she's in a rough condition, so one of them needs to stay with her. She tells Yumori to stay there, but Nazuna is against it, so Anko gives her money to hire him as a cuddle buddy, and Nazuna immediately agrees to it. After Nazuna leaves, Anko tells Yumori to talk to her, since she needs a distraction, so he mentions how he was a model student, but he got bored with it, so he decided to stop going to school. He tells her everything he's been through, and he notes that if he had never met Nazuna, he would have never been introduced to all the people that he knows today. He asks her what moment she knew she was an adult, but she mentions that becoming old doesn't mean a person has grown up, since she hasn't experienced anything that normal people do on their road to becoming an adult. She suddenly grabs him, telling him the cuddle buddy she paid for is slacking on his job, so she's taking things into her own hands. She notes that even though a vampire turned her father, he still wasn't completely innocent, but she knew she needed an enemy to give herself a reason to live. But now that the motivation is gone, she's decided to live like a normal person. She starts to cry, and mentions that living an ordinary life isn't easy, since whenever her mind wanders aimlessly, it always circles back to how unhappy she is. She mentions that she doesn't know what to do, thinking she wasted a lot of time, so Yumori pats her back and makes her fall asleep. After Nazuna returns, Yumori tells her to keep quiet, since Anko just fell asleep. They go outside, and he asks her if she thinks Anko can have an ordinary life, but Nazuna thinks it's impossible for her. She notes that Anko has always been weird, so she can't live a normal life, and she mentions that Yumori and his friends are just like her, since they're all weirdos who think they're normal. He wonders what they can do to help her, since he knows that she hasn't moved on from everything that happened, but Nazuna thinks they should let her sleep for the time being. They go to meet Midori, who immediately dresses Nazuna up as a maid and makes her start working since they're short on staff. Yumori notices that Love is also sitting in the cafe, and after seeing everyone work, Yumori asks him what makes someone fit to work there, but he has no answer for it. Midori mentions that there are a lot of things that are needed, but the most important thing is to make sure they like other people. After that, they meet with the rest of the vampires, and Yumori apologizes to Hito for getting him caught up in their mess, and he mentions that he's fine with it, but Sari is still upset. Nico notes that everything has settled down, so it's time they celebrate, and they tell Midori to introduce them to Love, since Sari and Hatsuka have already told them who their offspring are. But Midori notes that Love is hesitant to meet them, so she won't force him, and she knows that they will all fall for him after meeting him, which makes them even more interested. Sari mentions that Yumori has already joined them, even though he isn't a vampire, and they tell her she was the first one to check him out. But Kabura notes that she knew about him before anyone, because she used to keep an eye on Nazuna. She even knows that Nazuna used to drink the blood of drunk men, which Nazuna finds creepy, but everyone notes that it's because she never settles down. They ask her how much her relationship with Yumori has moved forward, but she tells them to mind their own business. Sari offers to tell them about her and Hito, but Midori isn't interested in it, which makes her angry and they start arguing. Yumori thinks about how the type of night they're having is the one Anko was trying to get rid of, and Nazuna realizes he's deep in thought. So she asks him what's bothering him, and he notes that he wants to help Anko by finding the vampire that turned her father and hearing what they have to say. Nazuna wonders why he wants to do that, so he explains that he doesn't wish for the last 10 years of Anko's life to be for nothing. Nazuna says goodbye to everyone else, and Midori tries to pressure them into kissing, but Nazuna tells her she shouldn't tease them that much. After she leaves, Midori feels bad about teasing them, and everyone thinks that a while ago, Nazuna would have kissed Yumori just to show that she can do it, but she has changed after being with him. Yumori wonders if she's really okay with leaving, and she notes that it's fine if they have a party with everyone once in a while, but she'll be bored if it happened every day. He tells her how glad he is to be with her, and she almost drops him hearing that, so he apologizes for saying it all of a sudden, but he mentions it's the first time he's seen her blush so clearly, and they land on a roof, where Yumori tries to show her all the lights in the city. But she grabs him from behind and bites his neck, as she notes that she prefers the time when they're alone. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.